Yes, well, we're serious about that. I see you're wearing your winter coat.
What's
A little chilly. I think it's chilly in here. It's gonna get.
All right.
You took one.
Did everybody check with Brenda? Can she hear you?
Oh,
I heard her.
yeah, she's happy.
Are all the lights on though?
No.
No.
I think that's what you're saying.
Um,
Well, the shades are always down. Shades are always down.
Why? Did you
Huh?
send it to?
Because the
Jen?
sun
No?
comes right over here. There we go. And they have meetings during the day. It's not all about you. There's meetings during the day.
Not every light.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
That's why you don't need the executive line. I'm waiting for Angel so we can start.
She getting more sustenance.
Well, there's a tree report that got sent. I thought you guys got it. Russ
Okay.
forwarded it to me today, but I didn't realize that he and I were the only ones that received it.
Yeah.
What was?
Okay.
We're talking about arborist, I'm looking at trees.
Call the meeting to order
Workshop.
Workshop.
or work. Well, it's just, no, it's.
Big difference.
Oh, it's a scheduled workshop.
Yes,
Okay.
but we have different rules for your workshops. Tom Tucson,
Here.
David Hume,
Here.
Shell Hart,
Here.
Jack McLaughlin.
Here.
Do we have Greg Filak?
He is not on Zoom. He
Okay,
responded he was attending.
all right. We do have an audience member.
We have an audience.
We do. He's holding us accountable.
Yeah. All right, so you wanted to call this meeting to talk about the trees, or this workshop to talk about the trees and review bond requirements for capital improvements. We thought we would be proactive, and Jan sent out a nice memo, which I printed, you have in front of you, that kind of laid out, according to the conversation she had with bond counsel. Basically, that's what you can do. There are some heavier conversations around some of those things to whether they come to fruition or not, but we thought that that may simplify this conversation so you can focus really on the tree issue.
All right, so you're saying, let's talk about bond requirements first.
You can do whatever you'd like. I was just kind of giving an overview.
Get that out of the way.
Sure.
Yeah, the bond requirements are pretty simple. It has to be an asset that could be capitalized in a normal tax code. So the boardwalk would be a great example of something. Its useful life is over. It'll have another 20-year, 25-year useful life. So that would be something that very likely would be fine as something to capitalize into a bond. I talked with MDS in passing on something else, and they said they didn't see any problem. The only issue we would have is that the Island Village bonds don't allow parity bonds, so we need to get bondholder consent on that one.
Okay.
But it looks like the rest of them would be fine. So the sidewalks would be probably, if it was a big project and we were putting in new sidewalks and doing a huge scope, that would probably be okay. And then-
Okay, so can you expand a little bit on that when you're saying putting new sidewalks in? That's as opposed to putting. Replacing existing
We'd
ones.
have to rip up everything.
It would be a question, our engineer would need to do an engineer's report, basically laying out, it would be a mile of sidewalks, it would be this much cost, and then we need to have a tax analysis, whether that would be capitalizable as opposed to just an operations and repairs.
Is there a particular percentage it has to cross the threshold of restoration to dictate that, you
No,
know what I mean, like 50% of all
No.
available sidewalks?
No, but it would cost you in order to. Again, you're a board, you can do what you like within the parameters.
Well, I
Yeah.
want to be within the
Yeah,
parameters.
You
I'm
can
not-
be within the parameters. I would advise, and I don't know if Jan agrees or not, that you would not get a bond for sidewalk replacements because it's gonna be very,
it's gonna be area specific, something like the boardwalks, you could assess everybody
Yes.
in celebration because everyone is getting the same benefit of having a boardwalk system. If you're doing sidewalks, it would be very
Those
likely it
people.
would be by neighborhood, so you'd have to put assessments on each neighborhood for the.
depending on the
20-year
cost
period.
of the project in that neighborhood. So those residents would be solely responsible for that part of the project.
I don't see why boardwalks and sidewalks are treated differently.
Yeah, they're saying.
Because we've done some sidewalks already, so there are some areas you would not want to go in and replace the sidewalks because you just fixed them and replace them. So
But are there any that are really 100%?
that's really.
Well, Island Village. for
Yeah, they're
example,
new.
Obviously does not
would
be
be
that
maybe a majority of Spring Lake wouldn't
wouldn't need it, and the ones that we just had the company.
That we're
come in and
doing
do
now, yeah, we did the couple miles or a mile on Celebration Boulevard a couple years ago. We did that with an outside vendor, it was
Right.
like $300,000-$400,000. We're working currently on them, but I will tell you, before you get really in depth about some bond conversations about maintenance items such as sidewalks, I would hold off on that until February because Jan and I may have some more information to be able to provide you guys that might lead that conversation a little bit better.
And I also think that when it comes to the boardwalks. I think before we even talk about any possibility of bonds, we would have to do an engineering assessment.
Yes.
Yes,
Of where we are with something like that,
But
because
you have sidewalks, boardwalks, ponds, roadways, I mean, if we could keep going. There's a lot of,
Yeah, a lot of those
Items
won't be
and-
covered under bonds.
so which one of those would not be covered in bonds and why? Cause that's a
Ponds.
lot of money.
ponds probably would not be covered unless you were going in and dredging and redoing all the edges of all the ponds, so you were
Which is-
completely
which is-
restoring them.
Possibly what the
it
engineering
is-
report would say.
Yes, we would definitely need an engineer's report or an engineer, or would go out, get some quotes on what it would
Yep.
cost. And then an analysis, is this just operations and maintenance that wasn't done for the last couple of years, or is this an actual capital project?
But that's been a known issue since I've been here 20 years. And
they've all been known issues.
well,
Yeah.
okay, but they exacerbated over time. So
Correct.
you're looking at ponds, that could be $5 million.
I mean,
Or more.
and that's, if there's a list of things to do, I mean, my advice would be. Have Mark or get whoever would be the pond expert to come up with give a work plan, but what needs to be done, what's the scope of it and the approximate
I
cost,
think
and then we could.
And that's with
Go from a-
everything. You
go from a
understand
tax
that.
Standpoint and say, okay, get the tax lawyer who has to give the opinion that
Right.
this is good capitalized cost to look at a draft engineer's report and say, yes, this is good, good, good. I mean, I don't think it's a high hurdle, but it's definitely a hurdle, and then basing the assessments, who do we assess for each
Is
piece?
there an infrastructure analysis that's done on those various systems to say, here's where we at, here's the useful life and.
Yeah, we have a reserve
Yeah.
study, and that gives you a starting point. A reserve study is not a definitive piece that because if we go by, let's say, the reserve study that we just did for Celebration, so what they do is exactly what you said. They take
Sure.
every asset that you have, whether it's pond structures, whatever it is, and light poles, big example in Celebration, you own them. So every light pole's what, $5,000 replacement?
Oh, 12,000
12,000? Okay.
12,000 a light.
for the tall one.
Yeah, for the tall ones. So you've got, let's say, 3,000 light poles in Celebration, right? It's a huge number. So what they do is they look at that and go, oh, these are supposed to last 15 years. Well, as we've all told you, we haven't replaced that many light poles. They've all
Except for the ones that
lasted.
got hit.
The ones that
Yeah.
get hit are the ones we typically, so if you were to go by that strict reserve study that said the life of these, according to the manufacturer, is 15 years, well, you're gonna be replacing those. So those are the numbers they use. So based on that reserve study, Celebration, you guys should be putting millions of dollars in your reserve account every year, right?
However, to the contrary, the sidewalks, if you plant an oak tree next to it, are not gonna yield the same lifespan that your reserve study would say. If you're gonna go in the
Exactly.
exact.
You're gonna be
Correct.
like
Yeah.
this.
Right.
So when I tell you that it's great, you should always have it done, always, but it's really just kind of a starting point to give you an idea to have those conversations of what should we be putting in reserves. So what we talked about the first year we got it done, when everybody saw that number, everybody was like, oh my gosh, if we're gonna have to raise assessments astronomically just to meet this number. Well, if you really start breaking it down, like we said, you've only replaced what, a handful of light poles
All the ones that have gotten.
in 28 years, right? So what we did was came up with a number. My number was more like 500,000 you should be putting in reserves every year. And I think we split the baby and we did like 300, 350. So it's just a starting point to be able to look at, and you really should get it updated every 5 years because they come in with new cost and escalations and all of that stuff. But it's really not a perfect science to be able to
When was the last
get the
one?
number. We just recently had it done, what,
2 years.
2 years?
years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the other side is the assessments of who's paying back, because you have state law that says it has to be the property that's benefited.
Right.
But if the CDD is paid for the repairs in some areas, and then we assess only the areas that are specifically benefited, we end up with some issues with residents. So that's another thing to think about. I mean, it's much easier if
when
you
you-
can have a district
yeah,
wide.
when you look at the stuff, like I was reading the document that she sent out. So there's a process to it all, right? You want to issue a bond, it takes an engineer to go in, and maybe it's not Mark, maybe it's an outside engineer, whatever it may be. But they go in, they do a full thing, and then it gets turned over, and it has to go through a process to see if they're gonna approve you to be able to get a bond based off of the engineering report and the need and the benefit and all of these things. So it's not a done deal just because it says you can include those things.
Capitalize it. But I
Yeah.
said, the boardwalk is a good example of something that has a useful life. It's
Right.
Probably at the end of its useful life, and it will need to be.
Yeah.
Major repair.
That's like a definitive,
That would be,
Correct.
everything would be millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And that
Everything
is,
would be millions.
Harvard Circle would be a unique boardwalk, because that's about the next one we want to do too, and really only for that whole neighborhood right there.
It's,
I mean, if you want to get technical.
and,
Well, that's just it, I
and
think.
that's where if it's a boardwalk system, so you would
Yeah.
wanna do the whole system at the same time, so you could say this is a boardwalk system that benefits everybody equally.
Yes, and we also say the same thing for sidewalks, right?
it's, I mean, again,
It would be an interest,
it would be an interesting discussion.
yeah, and I think.
Is there a case precedent on?
Assessments, there is very little case law. Very little case law on assessments. It's the special benefit to the resident.
Right.
No, I thought we were gonna ask Russ to evaluate the boardwalks. Let's see what it's doing.
Russ isn't an
Yeah,
engineer,
we'd have to have an.
no, we'd have to have an
We need an
engineer that's
engineer,
specific.
a
for-
structural engineer.
Correct,
Okay,
because they would go for,
Thank you.
over the whole thing. And
Yeah.
we'd go ahead and get to everybody.
Because, I mean, Russ could walk out there and go, yeah, I mean,
Looks like. it needs-
looks like it needs to be, right, but he's not an expert in that field.
But with the millions we know is there, millions under, how could you say $500,000 is even acceptable?
It's not,
it's
and
not,
that was the
That's-
point of the
So-
conversation
so
we
the-
had.
So that's that goes into the history of the development district, because for years, everything looks great. Right, and the, correct, but we deal with infrastructure, right, every little pieces of infrastructure. I think the only thing that I think they've done consistently is the alleyways, they know there's a timetable. This is how many times this will have to get repaved, that's the easy one. That's the easy one, the ponds look good, well, for the moment, but you look in some areas and you see there's liability there. Because the edges aren't grading to where there should be, and they have to be redone in some areas, okay? And then, of course, boardwalks, we've been repairing them and it's great, one board here, one board there, that's been good. The reality is that, okay, that's superficial because it's the pylons, it's everything else. And they take a beating, every time we clean it, every time we power wash it, we eat a little bit of wave, right? We wear those areas down. So, and so, well, we don't wanna raise everyone's fees too much, because we wanna stick it close to zero. Right?
That's where you get into the
That's-
The
conversations.
budget issue every year.
Yeah, every year.
We live here. And it looks beautiful. 10 years our inflation rate compounded, your dollar was about $1.34. So 34% compounded 10-year lift. The construction lift was 98%. So how much has the increase occurred in the last 10 years?
None,
So
zero.
How can a human being
So-
say fresh?
You're right, and this is when, so I took over from Gary Moyer 4 years ago. And prior to that, the budget increased every year, right? Cost increased. So what the district, the board at the time, and there were several different changeovers, right? So what they did is, you guys have always been financially sound, having money. So what they did is the budget increased every year. And what they were doing, instead of raising assessments, they were taking money from your savings, quote, right? to fund that budget. And there were no assessment increases. I want to say, Brenda, for 26 years, because when I came, it was the first,
22 years.
22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was the first year.
They backslap each other.
Yeah.
And there were some undeveloped, there were some undeveloped properties that weren't, Island Village was paying assessments but wasn't developed, so there was money there, excess funds. So in the
Right.
beginning, it probably worked fine.
It was, but Gary did a great job. What he did was he did a full build out budget. So he started assessments here instead of gradually building. And that's great. And he kept advising the
We
boards,
did warn them.
hey,
that they were
guys,
recommending
the cash is gonna run out. You're gonna have to start thinking about raising assessments. Well, it didn't happen. And he kept warning and warning. So when I came in,
And we raised-
me playing, like, oof, this is new, right? So I'm going, oh, and I built an actual budget. And when I came, I think the first year Jack was here, I was like, yeah, you guys need what? I think I started at like a 30% budget increase. And that was a large, think about it, right?
People
For
that-
decades,
Sure.
there's nothing. And all of a sudden, here I am. And let me tell you, I was the jerk for everything
There were other words.
that
Yeah.
year.
Other words that-
Because
but-
I'm coming in telling you reality, we need to raise these fees. And it was a large chunk, so we ended up talking through it and the board kind of settled on, I think the first year it was like 17%.
Something like
I
that.
think the letters went out with that.
So
amount,
it's,
come down a
Yeah.
little
it's,
lower,
it's
but-
the last 3 years that we've had significant increases.
Yeah,
and that
in the
was-
double digits.
And to put that in perspective, that was to operate in the black,
Yes,
okay?
not to get ahead.
Not
No.
to, yeah, and so we would go ahead and say, okay, we need to spend $250,000 in these projects. So we're gonna add 250,000 to reserve, so it's kind of a wash after a while. So that I think is where we're at, and we do know there's significant challenges in planning that have to be involved. I just think it's important to, like we're talking about, when we look at boardwalks, let's do that analysis. The same thing with ponds, maybe you have to do an analysis of where all that is. And go ahead and have an idea of what we're talking about, because otherwise it's hard to say. The boardwalks are gonna cost $5 million, right? And then they do the assessment, they do everything, and it's like. It's more like 11, right? We don't know what we're talking about. When we talk about
I'll tell you, we did get a proposal from, I think Carrie was at the end of last year from Cross Creek, when the board went with Cross Creek. We did ask them for a pond erosion, and I think it came back at 280,000. Yeah, and that was just for us to be able to have a conversation. Look, the ponds out there, I don't know when the last time they were inspected, but a lot of them are not to the slope that they should be, and we really need to start looking at that. And it was just kind of a general, hey, go out and look, tell us the worst case ones and give us kind of an estimate. And I can pull it, but I believe it was like 200 and something thousand. And that wasn't for all the ponds. Those were just like the most severe ones.
That's without dredging, it just can get really.
Yeah, and it's something I can tell you, and being that we've already had it on the record, it's okay. I wouldn't normally say this, but across the state of Florida, there's a lot of things happening with ponds where people are falling in, they can't get out, things of that nature. So you really have to look at that and make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do.
That Cross Creek proposal was to dredge, and they take the material and then they redo your pond banks with the
Mhm.
material.
With the material they sucked out.
A few $100,000 for one singular pond.
No, I think
No, it
it
was multiple.
included, I
It was
think it
multiple.
included like 5 or 6 ponds. It wasn't all of them, but it was the most severe ones, and it was a handful.
And. Even though things cost money, people go, oh, wait, let's be real though, the pond system in Celebration is crucial.
What's your infrastructure? You gotta
For
have
our
that.
infrastructure, for when we get hurricanes and stuff, to be able to handle the heavy storms and stuff. It's crucial, it's a non-negotiable. When you start losing those edges, you start losing the integrity of the ponds, and on top of the safety issue if somebody fell in, right? So at one point, it's gonna have to get done. I think it doesn't have to get done overnight. But I
No,
think we have.
I think you need to
start
put in a
these
plan.
discussions and plan and figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, to look at the big, like you say, ponds, boardwalks, sidewalks, look at those things and get the estimates and the engineering study on, okay, what would it take to really do this in
Yep.
1 year with bonds, or what, to spread it over however many years and build up reserves.
And I don't think we're ready to go ahead and say, yes, we want to do bonds now. I don't think we're
Right.
doing
Yeah.
that. it's discussions
There's
and
lots of
research.
options,
Of ways
but-
to do it.
Yeah.
Let's
But
go
with
ahead
that
and look
far
at all that.
behind, what are the other really tenable solutions? We haven't even talked about new stuff, which we're talking about.
No, and I think that's what I was telling you. I think we need to probably schedule,
Mhm.
a workshop after February, because I think Jan and I will hopefully, I believe, we'll
Some
have,
budget idea, yeah.
we'll have some pretty concrete information for you in February that may help guide this conversation a little bit better.
Think that's where that magic comes from, or-
Yes, there is, and we're working on it. I just don't want to say it because I want to make sure it's all buttoned up before we come and present it.
There's a lot of hurdles.
Yeah.
that
So,
Angela feels better about it than I do.
yeah, I feel good about it. We just got to wrap up some details on it, but there's definitely some hurdles, so I don't want to.
Yeah, so,
But it does make sense from the budget standpoint to kind of, let's prioritize the list.
Yeah.
And get the engineers or whatever experts we need to come and find out what is the maximum, because either you're gonna have to bond it, find money for it, or set up like you do on the alleys. Okay, this is the
Schedule.
5-year
The
plan,
schedule.
and this is the 5-year schedule.
And we
what
incorporate
need
that
to-
into our budget, so I guess.
Yeah.
so there's this Maslow's hierarchy of needs here. We're just talking on base level. We haven't talked about parking lots that
Nope.
are overcrowded and ridiculous, and you gotta go up at some point. You didn't talk about land, didn't talk about going and grow on some kind of building, and this could be tens of millions of dollars. So where does that?
Oh, yeah.
Where's that next tranche even fit in the conversation?
Well.
I think y'all need to bust it out.
So there's a couple of things. Pro hasn't really approached us with anything.
Do they have to?
Yes. Cause we don't, I mean, if they want us to partner, they have the land. So if they're interested in something, they would have to approach us, otherwise. Cause we've already approached them, we've already laid out the different scenarios, so they already know that. So that would be up to them if they want to pursue that or not, right?
And that was done a year ago.
Yeah, that was done, and we've been in communication with them, but now it,
It's a huge number.
they wanted to have a joint meeting at the end, in January. And they reached out to me for that, and I said, okay, so what would be the topic? You know, what's the action? What's the ask from us? They've never come back what the ask is. So we really don't want to have a meeting just to look at each other, because we've already kind of laid out master plan, we've already talked about all the different possibilities, so now if they're interested, we'll talk. But we can't have a meeting without subjects, right? We gotta have some action item or asks if they want to go ahead and do.
That's the parking part of the master plan.
Right.
And I was,
Currently, no,
I'm on board with that.
so,
We don't know any parking area.
well, we just have the one
We
part.
just have the one lot over there by assessing.
That's,
Yeah,
That's the only thing we have.
well,
There's one.
there was the ambiguous one on the other one, on the other
Where we
side,
have a certain number of.
right, but it's very small.
Lots.
You couldn't put a two.
You couldn't build on that.
I think what you all need to do, we did it in another district, we do it in a lot of districts. Harbor Isles is one, they have severe pond erosion. So obviously, everyone knows, insurance companies know as well, you're never, no district is ever fully funded, right, in reserves, you're just not. Unless you're just gonna astronomically raise your fees every single year to get there, and that's just not feasible, it's not realistic.
Right.
So as long as you have a plan, like right now, right, we have preemptively, we have a sidewalk plan. I can provide that, and which I have provided it to Aegis Insurance, they know we have a plan. So it helps, right, it helps with litigation and all these things, they have a plan, they're moving towards getting this accomplished.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
the other thing is ponds, right? So what we did is the engineer went out, they inspect the ponds at the beginning of every fiscal year. So October, November, they go out, they inspect all the ponds, and they provide us a spreadsheet, and it's ranked red, green, yellow, right? Here's the red section, here's the cost. He goes to Fin Outdoor, whoever, and says, this is the cost to get it done. And then this is the time frame. And then at the budget meeting, I come, I present that and go, okay, here's the plan this year for the ponds. What do you all want to budget? And then they're like, okay, let's look at the most severe things. It's going to cost us 100,000 to do this. Let's do 50,000 this year. We'll do 50,000 next year. And then that's how they've been doing it. So they literally budget $50,000 a year, and they work through his list. Every year he updates it, and they work through it, and they do whatever they can do for 50,000, because that's all they want, you
That
know.
doesn't mean we're do for 50,000.
No, we.
That may, we might do it for more, but just, that's just an
Absolutely.
example.
But that's your plan, right? You
Right.
put that together every year, you know that's coming.
You know.
Mark can provide that updated sheet or, you know, whatever, and then you kind of work through it and you're budgeting X amount every year, and that's your plan.
Litigation with insurance companies, you're still negligent, and I'm gonna use that word, because you're well underfunded and you can't show, that's not enough money to solve the problem. So to me, I'd still tear you apart as an insurance company to say, I don't care what your number is. You haven't done the appropriate things over time based upon the useful life of what you've got. And the way you planted your trees, you got a problem, and you're not solving the problem fast enough. And I'm still
Correct.
gonna hold you back.
And that's where the board has to look at, these are the high priority.
That's right.
ones, These are the high priority
We
ones.
can't,
and
we
you're
can't
gonna
fix
have to
everything
fix.
overnight.
Right. And what I mean by that, Shell, is when you going to your, if you're sitting here and you're not developing a plan, that's gonna get you in really big trouble. It helps mitigate, right? By just providing, hey, we have acknowledged this, we have a plan, here's our plan. Because, and the insurance companies that, you know, there's only a handful of them that do CDDs in the state of Florida. They all are very much aware of the financial burden and all of that, which why years ago they opted, okay, you have sidewalk problems, grinding is an acceptable budgetary thing. If you don't have budget constraints, then why would you do grinding? Just go straight for replacements and get it done.
Right.
But grinding is a financial savvy option, less expensive than panel replacement. So as long as you have those plans in place, it doesn't release you at all, but it does help when they're going, yeah, we know it's a huge community. They have a plan and they're working through it. And as long as we can show, which we have to, what have you done this year on sidewalks? Here's what we've done. Here's what's left to do. Trees, same thing, you know, anything that's a risk.
Yeah, and it's different that we're talking now, because years before, they didn't want to spend anything, they didn't want to talk about it, now it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, it looks good. And, it did, but it was under the surface that
Yeah,
time was wearing down.
And that
No.
even goes to maintenance items, by the way. I mean, Russ can tell you how many conversations he's had and he's like, oh, I need 200,000 to do this. And it's like, well, they don't want to spend that. And Russ is like, okay, what do they want to spend? Well, they want to spend 20,000. Okay, then I'll do what I can do in $20,000.
Right.
Yeah, and
You
that-
know,
and that's where we're getting the list, and an engineer or
Yeah.
professional study that says high priority, and can guide you in what.
Again, so what you're saying is this infrastructure assessment 2 years ago, what?
Well, more like 3 years ago, but still,
Yeah.
it's a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
Things are changing. for
Yep.
years.
absolutely.
You talking about the reserve assessment?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't predicated, as I recall, they didn't really look at our assets. They didn't go out and look at our sidewalks and say, based on this, I think you got 10 years left. They just did a general statement of sidewalks last 50 years.
That's right.
But then they didn't look and say, oh, well, I didn't realize you put your sidewalks next to a bunch of oak trees, so maybe 50 years turns into 15 years.
Yeah.
It was just.
That's what we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. A reserve study, you absolutely, I'm a huge proponent. I'm sure council is too, engineers probably as well.
But that was one of
It's a
the,
huge proponent to do, but
that
it's
was,
just a guide.
but that was one of the, when was the last time you did?
That was the first.
That was the first.
That was the first day, because I was like, have you guys had a reserve study? And everybody was like, no. And I'm like,
I mean,
you need to do
what
one.
was useful for me from that was it created a framework, at least that if
That's
you
right.
said, hey, I know my sidewalks don't last 50, they last 15, and hey, I know my light poles don't last 50, they last 100.
That's right.
You at least had the framework to start
Mhm.
plugging that in, but it also highlighted for me, I mean, over 80% of the value of the district of our assets came in four things. It was
Boardwalks.
boardwalks, sidewalks,
Sidewalks,
light
light
poles,
poles.
and alleyways.
That's right.
No, it wasn't alleyways. It was
Your staff.
underground, the water infrastructure.
Oh, the irrigation.
Yeah.
Irrigation. And
Irrigation.
ponds wasn't even on there because
No.
they don't look at ponds
No.
because it's dirt.
Well, you told us what the standard is for sidewalks, which is what, a half an inch of a.
Quarter.
Quarter inch.
Quarter of an inch, according to ADA.
Right, and so I think if we go to a structural engineer, they would have some standards by which they can evaluate boardwalks.
Mhm.
But I have no idea how you evaluate a pond.
Pond is supposed to be, is it 4-to-1 slope? Or 3-to-1?
It's 4-to-1, but it's a
4-to-1.
little loose because.
It
you
is.
Talk to the water management district, they say, well, can a toddler climb out?
That's right. That's
That's the
exactly
witness
right.
list.
So who's-
what does that mean? Is it?
We throw a toddler
Yeah, I
in
was
there
gonna say,
and
whose
see if they
toddler
can
do we
climb
throw
out.
in there?
Slope of
Yeah,
giant.
I gotta, yeah.
Yeah, the
I'm talking about you.
No, no, okay.
And ponds look steep, but during, right now, or when it's dry, some of the ponds like the one on East Lawn. It's steep and then it's flat.
Flat. Yep.
So there's a shelf there where you could stand, probably in ankle deep water. You look at the plan, man, that's a steep slope, but right underneath the water.
So they can climb
So
out.
all that, it's wave action up against that, is just kind of pull that material down and just kind of go to a shelf there.
Yep.
Okay.
Sand,
But you're exactly right. We went through litigation and it was a 4-to-1 slope, but because you have exactly what he's saying, if someone can literally climb out, because that's the problem across the state. Kids are
People are
slipping
getting-
out their parents' doors, in 2 seconds, and there's been some
And elderly.
fatalities.
Yeah, an elderly or getting.
Yep.
Mark, I've got a question for you. I understand we're gonna have to do some of these ponds. Is there anything as far as rebuilding these things that we could put some kind of underlayment in there that would stop this thing a little bit?
Yeah, there are some companies that'll come in and, part of it is obviously regrading and getting the dirt back into place, but then they'll pin down like a geofabric.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
facade with
What
that.
is it? Geo-webbing,
There's 3 or 4 different types. It's
So the
very expensive.
rip wrap with
You know what?
like big
Is it
rocks.
something we-
I knew you were gonna say that. It's very
It
expensive.
is, yeah.
It is expensive. It is.
But it definitely,
But it would give us a
Need
couple
something
extra
to-
years.
It would add
yeah,
to
and
the strength.
if you
Mhm.
improve it, maybe on the ones that are really bad, those are the ones you put the.
Yeah, because there are some, obviously, they're gonna be worse than others. Others are like, these are
Yeah,
fine.
where
But
where the
others are
wind
like,
hits, that's.
we
all.
need to do
I
something.
think the most inexpensive that I've seen, or at least at Harbor Isles, which they've done extensive work, is the riprap, the boulders, the big stones, and it's like white stones that you see.
That's what I see over near, on Waterside, of
That's-
course.
That's what they do. They put that because the wave action keeps it from eroding
Yeah, we did.
the
In
banks.
one of my CDDs, one of the geothermal stuff, we tried that. It's only been about a year, so I can't say what
Right.
it lasts. But they did, it was on a big lake that just constantly erodes.
There's a few different options.
Yeah, putting the big rocks on that shelf would flatten it out, but then is it a maintenance issue, with weeds and stuff growing out of those rocks, it's difficult to mow and weed whack. So
Yeah, and you
stepping
can't
under, they twist
spray.
their Ankle,
Yeah,
Yeah, you can do geotextile fiber underneath, but it doesn't last very long.
no, I think you have, I mean, all of them. You look at, I haven't seen one that's been like, oh, that's the one.
So, and again, I apologize for being late, but if we flip these,
We
Yeah,
did,
we
we
did.
started,
Okay.
yeah, we haven't gotten trees in.
okay. And since I had asked to put this on here, maybe I can jump in and you guys may have already, it sounds like you've already started kind of covering.
We
it. And that was, what I was trying to get at was, there are things that sidewalks kind of triggered it for me in our last budget cycle where, we estimated what 3 to 5 million was kind of the total project scope over a period of certain number of years, and we signed up for about 700,000. I don't personally feel, and I'll put it out there again, I don't feel that it's fair. We needed to do assessment increases on the operational side just to cover staff costs and our regular day-to-day things, but any capital improvement things. For us to continue to, in my opinion, increase assessments to cover those, because either the past 25 years haven't done this, or the future 25 years are expecting this. In my mind, that's perfectly apt for a bond that commits the district to a 30-year amortized schedule where everybody's kind of paying evenly over time, as opposed to, hey, let's keep increasing assessments over the next couple of years. So, I mean, I was thinking in my mind, I mean, the ponds are a perfect example, not just the resloping, but I think we're going to hear with our new pond vendor, the same thing that the past ones kind of told us is, hey, yes, I can treat aerators and I can, or I can do aerators and I can do some treatments, but there's underlying 30 years of stuff at the bottom that needs to get treated or dredged or whatever else. I mean, we were seeing quotes, Angel, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, some of these were on the low end, $25,000 a pond, on the high end, $75,000 a pond, depending on the size to get.
For
all
what,
the-
erosion?
No, not the erosion, just to get all
dredge
the
out the-
schmutz off the bottom.
So one of the things that came up with some of these is not everybody would get assessed.
Right.
So
Yeah, we
Island Village wouldn't get assessed because they're new sidewalks.
Sidewalks are very
Right.
hard to
Sidewalks.
bond.
So this is sidewalks are the tough one, because you have that, they talk about the benefit, it has to be specially benefiting, and can you say if you do it in this neighborhood, it's benefiting everyone?
Right.
Okay.
That's, as opposed to a boardwalk system where you can say the boardwalk system is open to everyone, everyone can use it.
Do we run into that
We-
problem with Island Village too, with ponds?
Well, they just did them.
I mean.
Yeah, I
it's a
mean,
new
They're
one-
not
area.
gonna system to
It's
repair
one-
something where they've got nothing to do, but.
Right.
But
But the thing about it is
arguably,
if
a
it's,
stormwater system all permitted together.
I think
They
they,
have
You
to
look at any
look
pond, a pond serves a certain area as well. You
Yeah.
Get into the weeds on that, saying, well, this pond on East Lawn.
I mean, where do you draw that line is where does that stop and who benefits from what?
that's the
That's-
problem that you're gonna run into when you're trying to take out bonds, because I think you missed this part of the conversation, but there's a process to it, right? Engineer has to go out, they have to do an engineer's report, certify it, then it goes to the next process. They review it and see if it meets the certain criteria to be able to provide a bond.
Right.
I will tell you, and again, Osceola County is much different than Pasco County, but they tried to do a bond. They had the same issue you guys have, street trees.
Mhm.
And they wanted to redo all the sidewalks. It was a major problem. And they said, you know what, instead of us paying maintenance, and they had in-house staff as well. We just can't keep up with it. So let's hire a vendor, and this is so much money, let's do a bond. And they couldn't get a bond done on sidewalks because it was considered maintenance. Now, every bond council is different.
yeah, who shot it down? The council or they just never went to market right?
Bond council is the one who preempted,
Has to give
states
the-
if it
has to
can
give the
go.
Tax opinion, this is
Yeah.
a capitalizable.
Right.
Restoration as opposed to.
Yeah, unless 90%.
Yeah, so again, every bond council is different, but
Yeah, you wanna get a good opinion, because the last thing you want is 10 years into it, somebody.
Yeah.
the IRS comes back and says, sorry, these aren't taxes.
you should have never been able to do this.
Right, I just want to reiterate or bring up what you brought in your analysis here that. A sidewalk, it's only good for like 25 years. You're not gonna get a 30-year bond for the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Nope.
the bonds can be the length of the time that could be.
So, but
capitalized.
you can
It's
have a
20 years.
bond that has 20 different items in it, from a sidewalk. to a
That's true,
boardwalk to
and
a-
we probably will, but I'm just saying, when we evaluate this thing, we need to be looking at every single area. And the
And the
life
life of each
expectancy
one,
of each of
and
these
then
things.
amortize it to make it.
And I-
so it's
I get it.
Right.
Can you do different amortization tables under a same bond? Can I do 10 years on these items, 30 years on this item, or does it have to all be?
It's all one.
Could be different bonds.
Generally, it's one, you can have different tranches, you could have A
Yeah.
and B tranche, which would have different maturities.
Okay,
So, yeah.
you've talked in the past, the complication of doing multiple bonds, because now you've got an overhead cost associated with. each
Yeah, no,
bond.
we could do one bond issue with like two tranches, like a 10-year and a 25-year or
Right.
something, if we had something that.
I think this costs you one thing, it's not cheap. Okay, like if you're getting a
No,
$10 million bond for 25 years. You're gonna pay back another $6 million in interest. So it's $16.5
Yep.
million you're gonna pay for that $10 million of usage, so.
Well, I mean, 20-year
Plus-
bond, depending on.
plus
Like
costs of
AA
the
rated
issuance.
20-year maturity. 3.85%.
Mm.
You could get to 20 million in a minute.
But you're
I-
more at 7.
You're more-
6 and
yeah.
7%.
Because you're
So
also,
the
you've
bonds,
got to
yeah.
pay the issuance cost and,
So it
All
can be
that.
fairly expensive.
You're
Well,
talking-
and I get that, my converse is, we've got 30 years of history as a district of not doing the right thing.
You're right.
Of saying, hey, we're gonna sock 10% every year or 20% every year. And we legally as a board can't commit when the 5 of us are gone in 4 years, we can't commit the next group to continue with this.
Greg, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to be aware.
Absolutely.
It ain't cheap.
Well, and if there was a cheaper option, I'd love to hear it, but at the end of the day. If it's a choice between paying a premium to
gotta
get it
wait.
done or not getting it done at all.
So even if it's a couple $100 grand a month, no, it's a lot of money, it's a 20-year bond.
yeah, I
How
mean,
many, how many rooftops and businesses would support that? And I understand it could be bifurcated, but.
Mhm.
I mean, this comes down to like $500 a year for.
no. So what you need to look at, and Brenda, can you pull up the assessment page of the budget to show how many rooftops and things that are
Getting
paying
well
in?
ahead of ourselves. I think
Yes.
the purpose of this
Yeah.
workshop, we just wanted to know what's bottom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
this
to,
is
and
not,
to sort of
Yeah.
decide, are there things that we should get an engineer or expert to look
Yeah,
at to
I-
say,
I think if
okay,
we
these are at the end of the life, this is what it would cost.
since we know now, it came patently obvious to us that, all right, the next step would be to evaluate the boardwalks. We already know about the sidewalk, and evaluate the ponds, and then we'll know what to do.
I think that's-
And you
No further
gotta,
questions.
you gotta look at too. Paying out a bond over 32 years versus raising your assessments every year, right? You
Right.
gotta look at both cost and see what makes more sense, because sometimes people are under the impression, oh, we just take out a bond and we don't have to raise assessments. Well, you actually are raising assessments because their debt service goes up.
For sure.
So it's a wash sometimes it's more expensive to take out a bond than it is to just raise your assessments. So you really need to look at that, because a lot of people, I've sat in so many boards where they're like, nope, let's just take a bond, and it's like, well, you would have been better off just raising your assessments versus paying. the
Well,
bond.
You can't get it done in that truncated period of time, you're
Correct.
kicking the can down the road,
Right.
so
Yep.
you're such in disrespect or disrepair and neglect, you
That's
gotta
where,
take it off.
if,
in a
if you need the
larger way.
capital now to get it done.
Right.
that's
And
where
I mean,
you
we're,
need the
we're
bonds.
talking 3
Yeah.
to 4 years just to tackle the sidewalk problem. We don't even know how big the boardwalk problem is because we haven't had them assessed, and we're just now for the first time talking about ponds. And oh, by the way, in my opinion, I wouldn't just throw in capital improvement. We talked about this at the last meeting. I wouldn't just throw capital improvement of existing stuff. I would throw new stuff. I mean, we talked about a security camera system, which we kind of last year, which we tabled because it's a 6-figure cost. And we were already putting up against a percentage that none of us were comfortable going past. Okay, now there's a security camera system. It's gonna be somewhere in the tune of 6 figures. We haven't even gotten a quote yet. You know, we've had talks before on and off, going back to when the first meeting I was on the board. There was discussion about, hey, parking is a problem downtown. We own the biggest parking lot downtown. Can we throw a couple $1 million in and do a parking deck downtown? If we're gonna do a bond as a capital improvement, I would like to see us talk about not just fixing the old stuff, but let's talk about the new stuff, which this community, not just this board, has been sitting here staring at for 20 years and not done anything. Sorry, and Brandon.
No, I get that, but there's gonna be a limit to where we can't.
Well,
There's a limit to where we can't.
and I think what I would, to Dave's point, what I was hoping to get out of this meeting was, what is the list of things? Put money aside for a second. What is the list of things we think we should even be entertaining? And then to be able to get from staff, boardwalks as an example, hey, we need to get an engineer out on boardwalks to do the structural assessment of every square inch of the boardwalks and figure out this boardwalk's got 3 years left on it, this year's got 10 years left on it. Okay, which ones are we due to replace?
Yeah, and I think we're in agreement with that,
Yeah.
we do have to have, we do have to go ahead and have an evaluation of boardwalks and a couple other things.
Hmm.
I definitely think that's what it is. And I think for this workshop discussion is to figure out what we can bond and what we can't bond, some of the, and I think we kind of established that, right? Like, you know, that there's some investigation that has to happen.
But we at least know where some of the landmines may.
Right,
Yeah.
there are, and there's some,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean,
So,
what I would think would be helpful for staff is if we're identifying those things that we would at least like to explore as a board and not commit to, because then if we say, okay, sidewalks are one of the things we'd like to consider bonding, Jan can go back and figure out, okay, show me the sidewalk layout of where we need to do the repairs. Hey, does this really fit with a total community-wide bond, or does this become would it be like a village by village bond? at that
Special
point?
assessment.
Yeah, but probably village by village, or
I mean,
we have to look at it. It's gonna be tough because we charged everybody for the last batch. So
well, and
that's where it's gonna be really tough to get a
legally, the
methodology
district
that's
is
fair
a
to everybody.
community. The district, I mean, we happen to have been built in village
Yes.
tranches.
But state law says it has to be the people that are specially benefited by the improvement.
Right.
And
Okay.
there's not a lot of case law to help support what specially benefited is.
Right.
So, yeah.
I was gonna say, it sounds like
The
the
more-
more dump truck through that.
The more expansive the improvement, the more likely it benefits the entire community.
And
Mhm.
all the more reason,
broad
guys,
based,
let's look
right.
broad on this entire thing so we can truly get everything in here and drive it towards
Yeah.
into supporting the entire community, not just, hey, I wanna do boardwalks in North Village. Jack statute.
There ain't any boardwalks in North Village, thank you very much.
no, the golf course is part of the,
It's on
part of the trails. No, I know, no, I'm just letting you know. part of the trail system.
So I mean, guys, I'll throw those out there. I mean, so we've talked boardwalks. So the boardwalk thing, we would need to get an engineer, from what I understand, and you guys tell me.
You need an engineer for every single thing that you're talking about. An
Okay.
engineer is gonna have to come out, do an extensive evaluation, a full report, and turn that over to be evaluated.
Okay, so
So.
Boardwalks.
Really needs an engineer.
Stormwater
boardwalks,
system.
ponds, stormwater system, sidewalks, alleyways, can we put, well, alleys, they're hard because they're.
Yeah, don't we already have a schedule for?
We
We do
do.
have
Mark's
a schedule.
provided a great schedule and
Yeah.
they've basically kept on that
Okay.
Right.
Because, yeah, we're just,
with the life. I mean,
yeah,
if it's not needed, they skip over it, but pretty much they have a schedule for the alleyways.
Okay, I mean, so.
And we book money for that.
So we talked about sidewalks, we talked about ponds, talked about boardwalks.
so,
That's really all you got.
Right, I mean, those are,
irrigation system.
You got the irrigation system
The
and
problem on that is,
I
from my
provided my
understanding-
assessment.
well, my understanding of irrigation system, we don't know there's a problem until something blows up and we got water all over the street.
That's right.
Is there a non-destructive test you can do on irrigation systems to do it like a
No,
pressure test? Okay.
Is there just?
the biggest,
I think that's maintenance.
the
I
problem
don't-
y'all need to look at is what we talked about, what, 2 years ago? MaxiCom is gonna become obsolete at some point. Russ was able to capture some equipment and controllers and whatever to
But
keep
that's like,
us
wasn't that
going.
like a $200,000 thing?
The new
replace the
irrigation
MaxiCom?
system?
No, millions.
No, you would have to go with a whole new system. MaxiCom is gonna
I
become
think we're good
obsolete.
with Maxicom, honestly, for the next 15, 20 years. We've got the.
I'm not the expert. I'm just telling you,
Said it does not compute.
It's-
That comment.
You're gonna lose support for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which we don't need support. I am the support.
right, so what happens when Russ is no longer willing to support?
Don't say that.
Well,
No,
no, but
trust me, I don't want to do that either.
Russ will come back and charge us $1,000 an hour.
There you go, as a consultant.
And
It's only gonna do it for 500, right?
So, but it's still
that's an example
something,
of
something you need to
Yeah,
think
it is. On
about.
the irrigation, what is? Biting us in the, you know what, here more and more, almost like weekly, is the wires. So you've got the main line, probably good for another 20, 30
With
years.
their direct berry wires.
And you get the roots and they wrap around in it, and as the roots get bigger, it stretches
The
the
wire.
wire. And it'll kind of break the copper in it, and it's so hard to get.
So
that.
from a 10,000-foot zoom out comment, are we saying doing a wholesale replacement or just going through the whole system, replacing all the wires, or how do you?
Well,
I think
determine-
that-
Maxicom's upgrade is wireless. Wireless controllers communicate wireless.
You're telling me even more that we just need to upgrade the system as opposed to
Yeah.
feeling.
well, okay, now wait a minute.
I would
We,
run the
we,
system
we,
until
we
you can't
voted
run it
on,
anymore.
additional systems to get us through a period of time,
That's right.
right? So
We'll need a new system when that period of time.
when that period of time is over.
That's right.
When is that period of time over?
When we talked
we-
about it, we talked about you guys starting to stash money
Right.
for a new system.
Well, I wanna say what Tom said, I'm gonna say a little bit differently. We voted on money to put into a reserve item to anticipate that, of which we taken out money for other things like a roof. that
No,
didn't
we
plan.
actually voted on purchasing additional systems.
Yeah.
No, you purchase parts.
Okay, we purchased
Okay.
parts.
And we
to
did
get us
that.
Through all that.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
that. And Russ seems to think that those parts will last you for a few years and get you, you're fine. My counter to that, and I am not an irrigation expert by any stretch of the imagination, but MaxiCom is becoming obsolete. You are not gonna have support for that. So at some point, you are gonna have to replace your system. Now, if Russ is telling you this system will last for another X amount of years, I mean,
So
I don't know.
and again, we're not making decisions right now. we're
Right,
just doing
yeah.
ideas. My ask of staff would then be, hey, at some point in the next 30, 60 days, if you guys wanna do a comparison side by side, pros and cons here, pros and cons here. Show me what a rough swag on a cost would be for replacement.
We did,
versus
we
a-
already have that I can
Okay.
provide. We provided it back when we were talking about when Russ got those extra parts.
I don't see the new system replacement though.
Yeah, Brett did a new system replacement.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I can pull it all.
Okay.
And kind of see what the updated costs are, just so you have that, but again, you know, the time frame of that, I mean, who knows? I don't know.
You do it by zones. Cause I was replacing retreats before I left, and we were doing it by zone.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Cause it was outrageously expensive to try.
Yeah,
Same thing. the
it
copper
is.
It's failing, you can only communicate the satellites. So we started doing the wireless communications by zone, so we do it by village or how your programming is.
I mean, if Russ tells you it's gonna last for years, he's the expert. He deals with it every single day.
And we don't have a problem with. Talking to controllers, it's the valves.
Yeah.
Every now and then.
Goes for
Crazy route. That, and on top of that is, it's not the main line or the big pipes or anything, it's the
Right.
small pipes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes 2-3 hours to cut, just to do a repair that's this big.
For the roots, yeah.
The roots go up to the curb and then they just go spread that way and then your pipes all down the curb. There's nothing you can do about that.
No, but I will say during budget time, we're gonna be talking about increasing that irrigation, maintenance and repair line item,
That would be just
for sure.
extra staff or something.
Yeah,
It's kind of unrelated, but Angela and I are actually reviewing the cost of the sidewalk replacement.
Yep.
Irrigation is about 3 times higher than what we anticipated.
Yep, because of
Every town, there's a route that's going around the pipe and.
Well, and the trees are only getting worse over time. This is not gonna be getting better.
Yeah.
It's gonna be getting worse faster.
Now, we'll be talking about trees in a few seconds.
Well,
Yeah,
So
we're not
there's
there yet.
unanticipated
Yeah,
costs, like
so-
he just gave you a prime example. Irrigation, is higher than what we had originally anticipated because of root work.
So those are the four basic. repair, quote,
Yeah.
capital items to look at. Okay.
well, and I would throw out, does anybody have interest in the new stuff? I mean, we talked about the camera system. Would we wanna, do we wanna go out and get the quote on that at least to see whether or not we want to.
See
include that
now,
in here?
but see, that's the thing though, I mean, I have a problem throwing every little thing into a bond because I don't think it belongs there. Right, so we're gonna spend, let's say. $1 million on a camera system and actually end up spending 2.6 million on a camera system. Right over the life of everything, and a camera system, for example. They don't last 10, 15 years. Right, they're a much shorter period of times, because they're out in weather. I don't think that's a possible thing, I don't think everything gets possible.
And building is-
So the-
It's capitalized, I mean.
Yeah,
I'm
but I
glad
don't,
when
I don't think you're not gonna get a 15 or 20 year out of a. security system.
If it can be capitalized, great, if not, then it can't go on bond, I mean, it's binary.
Yeah, I think the life is a lot shorter. I mean, I can ask that one, but I don't think that's. gonna
But,
fly.
yeah.
All the little stuff, I don't think we're gonna be able to pass in a
The
bond.
parking deck would be the other big one I would throw out.
Well, the parking, only if the parking deck only, because they researched this before. The
Mm,
parking deck on CCD property
Mhm.
is not effective. Because you have to have ramps and everything else, so as soon as you put ramps in, you're
You're
taking away,
losing half.
right, the only way it worked. Is if they built the parking deck on CCD property and the hotel parking lot.
I will happily
Right,
have,
I'm just saying that's how it was, something was, but.
if the board is okay, I will happily have
Could
a
be a
conversation with
partnership,
the hotel leadership to see if they're even interested in a discussion.
Right, but that was the only way it was gonna go ahead and help. It's just, that's a heavy lift.
That is a heavy lift, because then you have the public-private side of it
Yep.
and how we divide that up, so, I mean, it's worth the conversation, but. Just,
It's gonna be hard.
it will be tough to do, but it's worth the
I
conversation.
ain't heard anything on here that's gonna be easy. You know what I'm saying? So
Hotels, private, they got their gates up.
Bonds are funky to
Well,
be able to
the
throw
way they
stuff
did
in.
it was they would have access to so many spots.
Give them the lower deck.
Correct, and then everything else was, but the argument back then was in order to go ahead, there was a maintenance fee, and they went and said, okay,
We
everyone
start charging.
would charge
everybody.
it, and the residents say, no, we want to park free, and there's. It was complicated,
You would develop, I mean, we're getting way down the line here.
right, but I'm-
We would,
The fee structure for parking that would supposedly
100%.
cover.
Well, yeah, except for one thing.
people
Nobody's
also
gonna pay the
like it.
fees because they're gonna find someplace else to park and you have an empty parking lot, so you might as well
Yeah,
just.
we've
it's gotta be
investigated
free.
parking garages
Then we
in
can put
quite a
parking
few
meters all over
CDDs
the
and
parking
they
spaces.
never quite.
Mhm.
It's going about all downtown. People park
parking
everywhere.
meters everywhere.
All right, are we ready to move on to trees?
yes, we are, I think.
Well, do we, is that okay? Anybody have any objection to me talking to the hotel?
You can't make a decision tonight.
No, I'm not making a decision. I'm asking if there's any objection to me engaging the hotel with either Jan or Angel just to see
They
if
can't tell
they're
you that.
even interested in a discussion.
They can't tell you that.
Okay.
It's a workshop. Nobody can make,
Like
they
this is-
can't give you the
I
authorization.
think we need to get to some of the core stuff. First, but we've
Let's
got
look
the,
at the budgeting and whether the bonds take the place of budget reserves.
Greg, besides that, the
It's like-
hotel ownership is changing on the 1st of February.
Oh, wow.
yeah, so.
At the January meeting, they can authorize you to do that.
Okay.
They just can't do it today. Can't make any decisions, folks. I know, sorry. Y'all want this workshop?
All right, so any other questions on bond requirements? Kind of the word.
So you guys are gonna go back and look and see legally kind of what fits in here. I'm just trying to understand what's the next steps. What do we expect?
The next step is getting engineering or a professional to look and say, yeah, we're at the end of useful life, this is what we need to do to restore these.
And that would have to, and then we would have to prove that at a meeting.
Yes,
So you'll come back with quotes either for Mark's time, if Mark's gonna do it, or some outside engineering firm.
Yeah, Mark will have to tell me. I know he's already established that the boardwalks would need to be a structural engineer.
Mm.
I mean, if you want, again, I don't mean to sound negative because I'm not trying to be, but if you're gonna go down the path to have an engineer assess all your sidewalks, I think it's gonna be a waste, in my opinion, because I don't think you're gonna be able to throw sidewalks into there because it's very subjective. And it really is considered a maintenance item, but we can try if you wanna do that. And I don't know if that's your wheelhouse or not.
Or proposals from a sidewalk person as to whether these need to be ripped up and new panels put in, because then that's a restoration, or to come back and say, no, we can grind this mile and a half, and that would be fine.
Right.
I mean, that's really the distinction. If you can grind it down, you're in operations. If you're replacing significant number of panels, then it'll be getting new life.
So to pay an engineer to go through that and they won't take, it has to be a professional, right? It can't be even us.
We
to
need an
sign off
engineer's
on it.
report. It
Yeah,
would have to be something that Mark could look at and say, yeah,
right.
this appears rational from.
What's the
engineers.
criteria? ADA compliance requires.
It's that it can't be, it's past the maintenance life. It has to be totally
It has to go
redone.
to capitalize it as a new asset.
right.
Well,
Let me
I-
try
but I
every
think, I think to Carrie's question, what does that mean? Is it
And
the ADA
that's-
compliance piece?
what I'm
Because it's
saying.
cracked, is it
Yeah,
because
what's
it's
the
discolored?
criteria? If Mark's gonna do it, what is his criteria for evaluating it?
Bingo.
That
I
it
mean, well,
can't
after 30 years of
be-
sidewalks,
It
are they
can't be
old?
repaired, which means grinded, or the whole thing would have to be totally replaced. Everything,
Have we ground the area so many times? now
replace
that-
panels
that we
here
need
and
to
there.
Replace, this whole stretch.
That area in front of Walgreens,
Mm.
it's pretty clear that that is that. I mean,
I mean, but I think to Carrie's point, they're gonna be obvious things. Hey,
Yeah,
there
they're obvious.
are areas where it looks like.
Correct.
Well, how did we get
A BMX
proposals
ramp.
the last time when we had the outside vendor that did that whole?
So they just walk through and they tell you everything, that needs to be replaced, and then we kind of go behind them and
Actually, we
go,
marked them up.
yeah.
We did Celebration Boulevard with stuff in the neighborhoods, I'm
Oh,
not sure.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
I think the stuff on the boulevard, it's not being uplifted or anything. The boulevard's cracked over time.
That's why it's hard to get
There's other
sidewalks.
dynamics in each village.
That's why.
I evaluated North Village based on ADA compliance. And then when I did that list, there were some that were cosmetic, that were cracked, that, you could probably replace them, but it's not a compliance issue.
That's where it comes in, where you have someone go and mark exactly what Carrie, here's all the ADA issues, and then here's some other stuff that. Just by the board's expectation, we just need to replace, right? You don't want to grind anymore. You want full replacements. That's where it's where the
That's
rub
why
is.
Sidewalks gets hard because.
It's very
there's a
hard.
fine
Yeah,
line
so
between what you're maintaining and what you're.
Right.
When I walked in North Village, you could have 3 panels that definitely needed replacing,
Yeah.
right? You could feel the lift on this one, so you could grind this one, but then the next 4 panels you had, well, why didn't you just replace the whole thing?
That's right.
Well, that one wouldn't be covered.
That's
The other
right.
ones would, so you'd have to,
Bingo.
Yeah, and if, and I think from a tax perspective, they're gonna look at the majority. If the majority of this is restoration and you're grinding a quarter of it, I think that probably would fly. But
Right.
if you're,
that probably would.
if you're grinding most of it and just replacing a couple here and there that are.
I think
really
it's
bad,
I think
then
it's the other one. I
It
think
is,
yeah.
the grinding would be the minority.
Yeah.
So I
If
think.
majority is replacement, then. it's-
Well, that's what
That's
you
what
said.
I'm
Then,
thinking.
yeah,
Right.
then it's much more likely it's gonna be capitalizable and you're not gonna have to go out and do it for 15 years. hopefully.
Okay.
Right.
So to your comment of it, it's, how'd you say, it's to the board's determination of what's our standard?
Well, what I
How would we
mean, what I
define that?
mean by that is because there's safety hazards,
Mhm.
right? And just like Tom said, Tom's been a part of that, where Carrie's
Mm-hmm.
going out and he's marking everything that is an ADA compliance, because that we are held to. That's written.
Mm-hmm.
They can, if they're over a quarter of an inch, we have to do something about them, whether it's grinding or replacement. Well, then you have areas like this. There's 2 that need to be grinded here. This one's fine. So why do you want to spend the money to do anything? That's where it gets funky. And is the board's, you're like, well, let's just replace what needs to be done. So like Carrie said, this sidewalk may have a hairline crack in it. It's purely aesthetic. But do you want it replaced? Because it's in the middle of 2 that we're replacing. So do you want to replace all 3 because it just has a hairline crack? There's no real reason to replace it.
Out in the ring is maybe we'll mark 3 panels, pop those out, and then there's erosion underneath this one, and there's a root there, it's not pushed up yet, but. You know, if you don't do it now, you're gonna have to come back and.
Right.
You know, so we're popping those
So,
things. too.
but my question is, in order, from what I'm hearing, in order for you to go out and get an engineer to come out and say, okay, I need you to assess.
Mhm.
You need input from us as to say, assessing against what standard?
That's what I was.
It would be an ADA standard.
Well,
right?
there's the ADA compliance, but then there's,
ADA and the life of the.
The
roots.
life of the,
Yeah, that if the trees are mature trees, you replace them now and don't think they're gonna get a lot bigger.
right.
okay,
And the big problem now, the last 10 years is they grew.
We're not gonna be able to dictate our criteria to the engineer. They're gonna go out and they're gonna look and assess it the way that it needs to be, write up the report
Yeah.
and turn it in.
We can't,
I mean,
We
we
can't
can
influence
certainly talk to them and explain what's happened
Yeah.
over the years with the trees were small, they got big, we've been.
no, I get that part, but I was hearing, I thought, I heard something 5 minutes ago, the word, hey, if there's a cracked panel or something like that.
That's
we're gonna-
us, your staff.
Okay,
that's not them.
That's not-
us. That's
that-
our decision.
Yeah, that's
To
your
go ahead and
position
say.
to us, working within our budget. That's what I'm talking about.
okay, my misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Got it.
So it's subjective when we go out, right? We can say, oh, the board just wants us
Yeah,
to
but
find.
Bondable thing.
That's- yeah. No, it's gonna be totally different to have someone come
Okay.
out and assess all of this.
Misunderstood, okay.
No.
That's how I
Okay.
did North Village, there was 935 total panels, but there were like 70 that were really cosmetic. And I said, you can pull those out and save the money, and you're like, you're doing 900, you might.
Just get it done.
Throw those in.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So you've got enough between boardwalks, sidewalks, pond, both the resloping, whatevering, and the dredging.
Mhm.
Got enough from us to go get quotes in the next,
And
whatever,
then
30,
pull
60 days on
irrigation
engineering
numbers from,
and irrigation.
Yeah, I mean, these are not gonna definitely, I mean,
Do we have
hopefully
to-
we would have it by February,
Do
maybe.
we have to direct this at the next meeting or can we
Yes.
do? Okay.
Okay, and we not directing it, I just, in
Yep.
anticipation of the next meeting.
Yep.
We'll have it on the agenda.
What does it you need from us? to
We'll
make
have
this
it on the
happen?
agenda.
Yep,
Yep,
okay.
that's it. And then depending on, when people can get out and do those inspections and stuff, then that will determine when we can present it back to the board.
Can we run a tree?
Oh, boy.
One last question, Jan,
No, you can't.
3 years is what we would have to spend the money, is that correct?
generally, yes.
And 3 to 5
Um,
years?
Don't
No,
say,
No,
don't say generally.
3 maximum.
3 max.
So it really depends on the scope of what you end up doing as what a normal life, usually 3 years for a. Construction new improvement, I would say you probably get less on these types of improvements.
Jesus, that's for being shit 5.
No, it never goes past 3. As Angel knows, that money should not be anywhere near,
No.
if you go past 3, usually the bond's gonna be.
Yeah,
So that there is a hard tax deadline that should be followed.
the minute they're issued, you need to start with that plan and get it
Yeah.
going.
Okay,
Okay.
anything
trees.
else?
Those are easy.
Are they?
Well, so trees, okay, so this discussion's come up because we really need to have a solid tree policy. We have a tree policy from the front. Don't have a solid tree policy for the back. The reason that this hurricane really exacerbated that. It's put a lot of pressure on staff to go ahead and make those decisions. And a lot of homeowners think, oh, the trees are there. You guys need to trim. 'Em." We don't, it's a preserve area. There was one homeowner that came up and said, oh. The branches are leaning on mine, they can trim it. That's, and we're really looking for an established tree policy, which clearly dictates that. There was some discussion on dead trees.
Mhm.
Right, where if the dead tree is kind of, we.
They think it's dead.
Well, they think it's dead, we would have to then get an arborist to come out and certify it is dead, it's a threat. If it's a dead tree and pointing the other way away from the property, there's nothing we can do. But we do have to certify that, because if it is dead, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the state.
If we
We're on
have,
notice.
if we have the knowledge that it's dead or dying and could harm somebody, then we need to get rid of it.
Right, now, when you say that,
Mhm.
you're talking about. People shouldn't be in the preserve area,
No, that's correct.
okay, so if it's gonna be leaning on
We
somebody's
drop it.
property, yes, if
Then
it's
yes.
leaning the other way,
We
that's
just,
not,
we let it go and.
that's just part of
naturally.
nature.
But
Exactly.
if it is dead, let's say the arbor says it's dead. And there is a safety issue, we go in, we drop it in the preserve, we don't haul it out,
Correct.
we drop it in there. If it falls out of the preserve and lands on Shell's fence, right, here's his fence. We cut from the fence back. It's his responsibility from that fence forward.
Correct.
And that's where a lot of stuff, because again, trying to be nice and going, okay, we're already out here, we might as well just get it all.
You cut
We
that
can't-
back and
if
I've
it's
gotta haul
dead.
it out.
That's right.
Because it's crossed the plane of the property. line.
That's right. And we can't work on private property. That's right.
And go ahead. Jim.
Let me listen some more first.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
trying to
well,
go
no,
what
yeah, I need to,
Florida
'cause this is
law
the debate.
states.
But the law is if it's on our property and we know it's dead, we're responsible for it wherever it goes. So that, if it goes onto somebody's property and hits their fence, we're responsible if we knew it was dying and we had some notice of it. If we don't have any notice of it, they can cut whatever on their property
That's right.
themselves.
So the only way we would know is we're not doing inspections of any of these.
There's
we-
no
Somebody-
realistic feasible way for us to inspect miles and miles of
Yes.
conservation.
make sure that was the answer.
Yes,
Can.
I mean, if somebody's reported that
Yes.
this tree looks like it's gonna fall on my house, then
And-
we're on notice and we
Yes.
need to get somebody out there quick, but they can cut it themselves on their property.
And I think-
Vertically.
But I also think we need to define how we were aware, right? Somebody passes me on the sidewalk, oh, Tom, you're on the board. You got a
No.
tree behind my house. No, I'd like to define officially,
It's gotta be reported
There's a-
to staff through the app.
correct, you see what I'm saying? That has to be an official
Yep, reported. to the
transaction
app or in writing to
document
the
that says
CDD.
we're notified.
Reporting it to a board member, and I can tell you, I know every one of you gets stopped, you get called, you get email, I know, I
I run,
get it.
so I'm very fast.
Well, I get it, but, and because it's on back porch, front porch, side porch,
It's not a-
Facebook, that doesn't exist to us. We don't monitor those things. I can't hunt Greg down in Istanbul and go, hey, did you get any word from the
Oh,
residents?
she did.
Because
I did respond.
And none of you are on Facebook, so you're not.
That's
responding
right.
there.
I
right?
only respond to Jan.
Thank you.
So it needs to be reported through the app. If they don't have the app, that's fine. Call the
They
office,
can call the
talk to someone. That way we can get we put it into the app. If they don't want to go on there, we'll create the work order.
So trees in back, the trees themselves seem pretty simple. It seems to me we just need to codify the rule. The other thing I would throw in there is obviously there's CDD, who seems like, I don't know that we need to bring them into the conversation. It's just a reality though. A lot of the properties on, a lot of the back here, the properties behind properties here are CDD and not us.
Harry can opine on that. He talks to them all the time.
Zip tie.
Some of
Sometimes the trees.
conservation areas are not ours. they
Yeah.
belong to-
I mean, I'm all too happy if the answer from staff is that CDD, that's not us, we'll call them.
Yes.
That I think is what it is.
That is
Yeah.
true.
Prime example, was resident in Lake Ellen
Yeah,
10, 11, 12 days ago.
Right.
Cleared from here to past that wall,
Yeah.
because they wanted to.
Call CDD.
we did, took photos and I sent them an email and I'm like, so you got a problem?
Yep.
There's a member in the audience that wanted to say something.
The only member of the audience.
That was the point.
1471 Resolute Street. I would think examples of what Jan and Andrew were talking about that could impact you the greatest is not knowing whether the tree is dead or not. But after a hurricane that blows a lot of trees in a lot of spaces from CDD property to private property, that's where I think you need to identify.
Absolutely.
In your, about who's responsible for what. Right, we've taken care of that for years, but have it in writing.
There was a homeowner that had a palm tree fall with fence and into the pool, right?
Yeah.
And so they said, I need you to go ahead and clear it away. Well, the rest of the team comes out and they clear the palm tree off our portion. And he goes, he came by, he didn't clean it up. I'm like, we're not going to. And so part of this is not just having the tree policy, this will go into a hurricane statement that will make for the community. But it's what, acts of God, we're not responsible for, because it's an act of God. And it's just a matter of informing everyone, because there are a lot of tickets where people want us to do the trimming for them. The other part of it on the tree policy is trespassing. So people, when they go ahead and trim, they're like, you know what, I wanna hire these guys again. And then they go 5, 10, 15 feet plus into the preserve to cut the trees. And my question is, how do we go after these people?
That's a problem. I mean, that's a
That's a
problem.
big
from-
problem.
From the permits, it's a problem, and under the law, it's a problem. They can only cut what's on their property. If they've damaged our tree or cut our tree, we can go after them.
So for conservation, Mark, there's a compliance. It's like, what is it, 80% vegetation?
Once-
Or those
once any-
just mitigation areas?
Yeah, once any sort of initial monitoring is done.
They don't-
There's no
they don't-
compliance?
Mandate to.
Really?
do anything further.
Was that Osceola County? Because we're dealing with it in Hillsborough County now.
It's different with new permits. There's an operating and maintenance requirement for new ERP permits that are being issued.
Well, this one's got to be old, and the mitigation area was released. But what they've done is they've gone in like 20 feet into the conservation. So what they did is they came out and looked at it and they're like, you're out of compliance. So they took Google
They
images
said
from,
the district
not
was,
here,
or
the district.
or the homeowner.
No,
You
the
will always
district.
be the one out of
Right.
compliance, not the homeowner. It'll be your job to go after the homeowner.
Right.
So, because you hold the permit. So what they did over there is they took Google images that went back a few years to kind of see when he started removing stuff. He removed cypress trees, he removed palm tree, like all this stuff. And they said that there has to be 80% vegetation in there. And he had to replace it all. And it was like $10,000. So I don't know if that's Hillsborough or is it across the board? Like, I don't know.
I've never
Well,
heard
that's-
80%, but we did go after some homeowners in another district that cleared, and the water management district came and supported us in telling them what they had to do to.
Because I have two addresses we need to go in.
So
'cause they
maybe
actually
there's
built
not
the
a-
road And pushed back.
So maybe
That's
there's
in
not a
outbuilding.
percentage of compliance, but you just have to replace
Restore
something
what you've taken out.
to the way it was. Okay.
So again, the policy really needs to be comprehensive. Because it's not just what we trim. But also what
Well,
people are trimming and
responsibility.
thinking they can go ahead and get away with.
Well, so let me ask this, I mean, you all have dealt with this in other districts, it clearly sounds like, is there a template thing that we should be looking at that you just need input from us to say yes, no, maybe so on different parts, or is this just?
No, it's usually
It's one
when there's
thing.
when there's a problem, you're like, okay, what do we do? Because these people cleared their.
I mean, there's not much for us to determine here, it's dictated by law as to what you can and can't do. and
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Who can
So
do it, so.
So you
That's-
wanna
yeah.
just update, take the policy and just jot down a couple things for y'all to look at the next
Yeah.
meeting and say.
I think
okay, we
so.
like this.
You cannot do any work in a conservation area, like you
Yeah.
just can't.
We want this comprehensive, and I want this on the website when under our policies, so we can point to it.
So I think
Yep.
another piece of this is. People read the words and they go, all right, that makes sense to me, right? And then, of course, when it comes to their house, they don't do it. Of having visuals that actually show. Property line, this is what you can trim, this is what you can't. I know that sounds basic. But that is what people do.
There needs to be an idiot's guide to this, because even on the one that we did a year or two ago. Well. I'll go so far as to say there were people being intentionally obtuse on what it said.
Oh, no, oh, absolutely, because
And
they
then there were
want.
people who just legitimately didn't understand what it said.
It's very easy.
Yeah.
Anything that crosses your property, you have a right to protect your property. So you can vertically trim.
Mm.
All the
Vertically,
way, all the way down to the roots. You
To
can
the-
cut
all the
whatever you
way.
want.
from top all the way to the top vertically with your property line to keep anything from encroaching. That's it. That's really all you can do.
Except if it's dead.
No,
So
Yes.
if we're,
If it's identified as dead. or
we have to
deceased,
remove
Then
it.
we
It's
have to remove it,
ours. You
yes.
can't go remove it.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but then it's our responsibility.
Right.
But
I'm
then there's
talking
no
about
leaves,
trimming
there's no leaves
homeowners.
with that, 'cause
Yeah, I'm talking about the homeowners. Your right as a homeowner is to
Yeah.
protect
So,
your property.
Let's go back to that point. What is our policy and procedure for identifying if we're notified, hey, we think this is dead, how do we confirm or deny that?
We get it an arborist and right now we go through United. Carrie actually just got a report. It's in front of you.
I apologize, I thought that got sent to you, because 6 people were copied on it.
And I did too, so it was my
Yeah, I
failure
sat
as
down,
well.
I'm like, oh, it's not, really got sent to you.
So what they did, so to answer your question, Dave, this came up, these people went out, they reported these trees are dead. We went out and looked at them and Carrie and then we're like, man, I don't think so. They got an arborist to come out and this is the report for those trees. So that would be the process. And then based on the report, if they need to be removed, we would remove them. If they don't need to be removed, we would tell the homeowner, the arborist does not believe they're in any danger or what have you.
Yeah,
How-
and I think your policy rates it, because it says low, moderate, high, and extreme.
How long does it take to get an arborist out there? Something's.
Yeah, no, I think it took longer than that.
Well, this one did because we were kind of going back and forth with the homeowner, but usually a couple
It could take a
days.
week.
So, and again, this will, I think, go to the hurricane preparedness, because as you know, right before the hurricane. You guys were inundated with, I'm scared of that tree.
Yeah.
Okay, there is no physical way staff can go out and trim trees a week before the hurricane as they're doing everything else, it's impossible.
And I wanna bifurcate. We're talking trees in the back. I wanna save trees in the front first separately though, because I think that's.
Well, here's the deal,
Or we can tackle it now.
we can tackle it now, I gotta tell you. The trees that fell in front, first of all, storms are gonna happen and things
Yes,
are gonna happen, so
that's
that's number one.
Mhm.
Number two, I saw a lot of houses where, and I've talked to some homeowners where they went ahead and said, well, you know. They never cut that, it was over your property line, you had every opportunity to go ahead and trim that,
That's
that's not on us.
Mhm.
Right, I mean, like that one house where I knew the branch was gonna fall, why don't you cut it?
That's right.
I don't understand, why don't you cut it? And it was gonna damage my house, why didn't you cut it?
The other thing I want you guys to take in consideration, we ran into this a lot this time where. Spring Park Loop. The gentleman calls, I want you to come look at my tree. This is well before the storm. We went out, we looked at the tree, it was placed on a watch list just because he wanted us to go look at it. It was in no danger of falling, doing anything. Well, then all of a sudden, we had a major hurricane come through and 100 trees were down. So now all of a sudden that tree fell on his porch. And we're responsible for it because we told him the tree didn't need to be removed. Well, it was an act of God, it was a storm. The healthiest trees in Celebration blew over. So there's got to be some sort of, something.
Well, and that's to Tom's point, listen, there were absolutely emails of people that came in 3 days before the storm. That we
Absolutely.
had never heard from before that
Nope.
said, hey, there's this tree.
That's right.
So that, number one, I agree with you 100%. Number two, the ones that they're identifying ahead of time. I personally do have an issue that it was identified because in my mind, acts of God happen. I'll also say it's Florida. We know hurricanes happen. This is not a
Yeah.
mystery. It'd be like being in Buffalo and saying, well, we didn't buy snowplows because we didn't know if it was gonna snow.
Mhm.
We know hurricanes come through
But that
here.
still doesn't warrant us to go out and rip out trees just because you call and say, I want this tree out, right? Or there's a storm coming and I believe this tree is gonna fall over.
And
If the
I-
board wants to direct us to do that, that's what I'm asking for.
I think it's a
Well,
dangerous.
It
practice.
is.
Well, and I'm not disputing that we necessarily had to go and rip out the tree. But I'd also say if I were Joe homeowner and that happened, and I said, I called you ahead of time. You went so far as to put it on a watch list. You've now elevated this up to a different status where you've acknowledged, tree's not 100%. And now I'm saying, I'm afraid it's gonna blow over in a hurricane, and then it blows over in a hurricane. While we may elect not to remove it after or beforehand, I have a hard time saying we're not liable afterwards because we made that choice.
I
I
have
don't.
an easy time to say. we're
I
not
don't,
liable
I
because
stand 100%
homeowner-
by that
The
decision.
homeowner says, I feel, there's no scientific
right.
evidence between I feel, that's an opinion, that means nothing.
Right, and that's
That
why he
just
called
doesn't
us up
mean
and
anything.
asked for the arborist
You know
report,
what?
which led us to put it on a watch list.
You know what?
No, that's not true.
No,
That's not what happened?
No,
We
we
never-
an arbor was never mentioned.
No, we put it on the watch list
Because-
along with the other 50
Yeah.
some trees in Spring.
Yeah.
Park Loop.
Okay.
But
There was
they
never an
die,
arborist.
and Who knows when, not blow over, but die.
Yeah,
They're all deteriorating.
can we, one more question, and don't say your address, because we already know your address.
We go around on this a lot, and we've done it over the years,
Mhm.
both here before your board and over in Covenants. But as Jan alluded to, there's a lot of state law
Correct.
that describes this. So when you do write your comprehensive plan, I highly recommend that you use that verbiage, provide the references, so that any resident who said, no, I think it's this way, you have state law to back you up, and it's
Mhm.
written into your comprehensive plan, and it's got a reference there, in state law 2903,
Yeah, we've got case law on most of it, other than the hurricane acts of God, because that is a situation where. How do you explain and how do you define what is, and I think that's where, reports of dead trees should come immediately upon. Within 14 days of a hurricane or event, the district is gonna be unable to.
I think your
Go out
issue
and
is
check your-
if you call it something and you escalate it to, oh, it's on a watch list, all of a sudden it's like you've given the credence. Whether it should have been called that or not is the question.
Right.
That's an example, is no good deed goes unpunished.
Well, I understand.
But I
that,
think,
but
yeah, but
don't-
we need to make this binary, either it's
Exactly.
bad or it's good.
That's right.
I agree.
No
It's-
watch
It
lists
can't be
anymore.
watch
It's,
list.
yeah, it's-
That's not a good term.
No, I agree, because now it's giving, oh, well, there's a possibility, and they're gonna run with it.
No,
They're
it's a
gonna go
yes
ahead and
or
run with
no,
it, which is
and
what
then
happened.
there's acts of God.
Yeah, well,
And I'm okay
3
with that.
times that he called, we
Right.
told him, we've been and looked at your tree, there's no issue, there's no issue. So then when Russ went out, because there are trees in Celebration, correct me if I'm wrong, that do or have just died. They're no dam or falling over or hazard, but they just internally die. So I think that's what this was, because a lot of trees on Spring Park Loop have just
I'm just not.
died, still standing. They're in no thing of falling over,
It's-
but they're
it's the
just
core,
dead.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was the premise behind putting it on there. There's a lot of trees on Spring Park Loop that are on that watch list, but so that's where you guys need to, because every time someone calls and says, you know, I want this tree out, and we say no, right? There's no damage, there's not any hazard, it doesn't need to come out. And then it blows over in a storm, or 2 weeks later it falls over because of whatever reason. If you want us to go take those out, we will, but we'd be taking out a ton of trees every day in Celebration because everybody wants their tree out.
Same thing with East Park, I don't know how many. We could take out 25 there easy.
Yeah.
Easily, yeah.
Well,
Can mass restoration of trees be capitalized?
Trees, I
I'm
don't
not- I'm
think
not thinking
so.
you were going right where I was about to go, you beat me to it. And listen, guys, I'm gonna play devil's advocate on it, because if a homeowner, if I'm Joe homeowner and I've called up, and our tree policy already identifies that as a homeowner, I've got responsibility for the daily maintenance, so cutting the grass around it and the mulch and the
Yep.
aesthetic things.
Yep.
Right.
But it identifies in there, if a tree dies,
Mhm.
CDD is gonna replace it.
Right,
That's what our policy says today.
that's right.
So the guy called up and says, I think the trees died. And our answer was, we put it on a watch list.
No, that's not the answer, Greg. We had 7 conversations with this man.
And we put it
back
on a
and
watch
forth.
list.
It wasn't dead. It wasn't dead. The tree wasn't
But
dead.
My question is it incumbent on the homeowner beyond calling up and saying a CDD tree, I think has a problem, whether it's dead or whatever?
Okay,
Is it incumbent on the homeowner to go get an arborist report for that? If the district comes out and looks at it and says, no, looks good to me.
It's our tree, that's our responsibility.
yeah, we would get the arborist, but if he doesn't like our answer, which a lot of these residents don't like our answer,
That is,
Which I'm okay with.
that's
Okay,
the
but here-
problem.
But here's
That-
the gap.
Try to be nice,
Hold-
if
hold-
they would put it on the
Well,
wall.
hold on.
I'm not gonna go over every scenario though.
But hold on, here's the
I mean,
gap.
What's the
We
gap?
never got the arborist. We went out there, looked at the.
Why
tree,
would we
said,
get the
why would we
arborist?
get an
The-
arborist?
The landscape company told us it's not dead. We don't go and do this, we take them with us, and
That's
if,
just not. the
why
way.
would we spend the money on an arborist if it's not needed?
You can't
Well,
do-
I think that's the, though, but our policy going forward, I don't really want to look in the rearview mirror of this, except to draft a policy that is applicable for these situations going forward. So I think the next time we have this issue, it should be mandatory that we do have an arborist. I don't
Okay.
want Joe Schmo going over there, yeah, looks dead to me, or.
So-
that's
Because the alternative is he
So,
gets his
no, wait a
arborist
minute,
and then we
hold
don't
on.
leave his arborist.
Okay, so
Our
now,
You're going down a
Now-
very,
now
very
would you-
expensive path.
You created something horrible.
You're
You
going,
created something horrible. You know why? Because you are not sitting in the areas where we're actually getting tickets in. You're sitting on a board, right? You have no clue of what residents are actually going ahead and calling in for. So the arborist you're talking about, you know, you mentioned about responsibility and budgets and kind of looking at all that. You have amplified our budget significantly. Because I can't tell you how many people, we should pull the tickets on this one, because this would be.
oh, there's
hilarious.
a lot.
The number of people who call in who feel, I don't think that's, I mean, it is amazing. I
It is.
mean, one day the wind's blowing out, I don't feel good about it, didn't see the trees, I'm worried about it.
Guys, no,
That is, let me finish. That, to go ahead and call an arborist for every single one. That's,
But we just did it, how is it different than what we just did here?
No,
Because-
these people said their
This is a
tree,
prime example, if you don't mind.
we went and looked at them.
Lady said the tree's dead. I go out there and I said, no, man, it's not. She calls again, says the tree's dead. Gets Brett out there. She
We
gets
all- we all-
Carrie out there. Another time she gets them out there. Or, you know, what the hell are you gonna do?
All right.
Who's worried about
Until
it
we
falling
finally
on our
got
house?
arborist, And the tree's fine.
Well, it's moderate risk. on this.
Moderate.
Well, Yeah, if a hurricane comes or something.
Well, yeah,
But
we'll go
it's
into the
moderate.
details. of
But it's a
this.
moderate risk for every tree in celebration. because
Yes.
Everything is wet.
That is correct.
So I'm just, you know,
And you're right, Dave. This is the direction. That was the purpose of this, right? We need direction from the board as staff because we get inundated with tree calls. And they're from here to here, right?
But-
So what's the
This is
delineation?
not it. I'm not accepting this, and I'll tell you why. Is because what's the legal standard? Dead or diseased, right? Isn't that where we have exposure?
Yeah, that we're on notice.
All right,
that
dead or
something's wrong,
diseased. I'm just
something
gonna use
wrong.
that terminology,
Okay.
not moderate risk, not high risk, just dead.
It's not dead or
diseased.
diseased. It's that
I
it's a
need-
safety
yes.
hazard.
Who defines dead or diseased? It's
Yeah,
gotta be an arborist. Nobody else.
Yeah.
Not you, not you, not me, not you.
That's right.
It's gotta be an arborist.
so what does moderate risk say to us if we have a lawsuit?
This is
Well,
from an
explains
arborist.
nothing to me.
This
Yeah.
is from an arborist.
I know, but
So-
it's not done
It's
right.
not, it's not done.
We
to
need
give us a
dead or
legal
diseased
standard.
or live and well.
Yeah,
Again, it's gotta be
moderate
binary.
risk sets us up for liability, even if
Yes,
the
I
tree
don't,
is not.
I don't
sick.
want
Watch
dollars.
That's a good
and
point.
everything else.
That's a good point.
He's trying to cover his butt.
I get that. I agree
Everything's
with
gonna
that.
be moderate
It's
risk.
gotta be very much,
Fine.
very
Dead
clear.
or alive.
Yeah.
Very
That's
clear.
the report. I want.
Should be considered for removal or frequent monitoring and mitigation.
The frequent monitoring to me,
Doesn't
We don't
that's
wanna
what
monitor.
concerns me is the monitoring because those become.
Every
permanent
arborist is
issues.
gonna give you the same thing.
No, we tell the arborist what we want, which is it dead or diseased or is it live and well?
Then you're gonna make the determination,
They need to, yeah, I don't.
but I'm telling you that if we tell them, look, when you go and inspect a tree, we just want a report back that says it's dead
I
or
want red,
diseased.
I don't want yellow.
Yeah, it's either dead and diseased or it's fine. And then it's gonna come back to you and you're gonna make that determination whether to remove that tree.
No, but it's set in the policy.
This is
Okay.
straight out of arborist's mouth. He said you can get an arborist here, or arborist here, and you're gonna get two different.
I know,
services.
it's our arborist is the only one that matters.
Yeah.
But this goes back to my comment before, which I realize it's incurring cost on the board. We've got two options when somebody, in my mind, when somebody calls in and says there's a problem with a tree. Either we go get an arborist report, under which point, to Dave's point, and I agree with you, we're incurring the cost, which sucks, but at least we know it's our arborist who's gonna follow the policies and stuff that we set out there. Or we tell the homeowner, it's your responsibility to get an arborist, which is great for us because we're not paying it, but guess what? Joe's Chicken Shack is gonna come out here and give us a
So-
report.
Says.
So,
take the tree.
so,
Yes.
so the litmus test. Let me see, let me, I wanna make sure I heard this correctly. The litmus test, from what you said, is that anybody calls up about their tree.
We have to.
No, wait a minute. I'm calling somebody for my tree's fine. You gotta get an arborist, because I'm concerned. Don't feel good. Scared. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
Angel, how many,
I feel like.
best
we're
guess, how
paying
many
into a
tickets
quarter.
we
We
used
gotta
to
have.
bring in
Oh
over
my
the past
gosh.
6 months that would apply?
Over the
So we can
past
get
6 months
everybody in
for
celebration
trees?
To call on their tree.
That would require us
Because
to send out an
they're
arborist.
worried about
And
their tree.
then we
But-
have.
but
cover
that-
grass, but-
That's
Because
the
they feel the
determination.
tree's
I
dead,
think-
they're
I think-
dying.
To Tom's definition, if, based on what Tom just said, if it was, if a homeowner
We
calls up
get-
and says, I feel like there's a problem with my tree.
But the problem could
Be
be,
a bunch.
it could be a bunch of different problems, disease, dead. I think it's gonna
They don't-
fall
or-
over. I
They
think
don't wanna
it's,
trim their tree, and we're gonna get an arborist, because they don't wanna trim their.
Or
tree.
it's winter time, the leaves
No.
fall.
yeah, the
I'm
leaves are falling off. I hear the
concerned
tree is
about my
dead.
tree.
You tell them it's dormant, the leaves are gonna fall, it's gonna green back. No, this tree's dead, branches are falling off. I mean,
We're not gonna call an arborist because somebody doesn't wanna come back. and
but
break it.
that's what you all need to
I'm concerned
determine.
about my tree, why can't you call an arborist?
Well, I kind of feel like we're painted again.
Yeah,
painted
the
in corner, because if
arborist
we
is
don't,
saying moderate risk for everything.
that's
Yeah,
dead or diseased or alive and well. It's binary. And I think, can't this be an easy 5-minute
You would think.
assessment?
So wait a minute,
I don't know, not at all.
Okay, so-
Much easier assessment.
what do other communities do? That have trees, do they go per Florida law, or they go by? You know, call an arborist for everything?
No, I mean, I can just tell you some different examples. In one community I manage down, like I said, in Apollo Beach, residents call and they'll say, you know, The tree looks like it, well, I'll give you a prime example. So in the back of their house, their land goes all the way to the pond's edge, right? Right to the pond's edge. So there's trees planted on the pond's edge that really are in the easement, because we have an easement around the pond. But even though your property goes to the pond edge, so technically those trees are on his property, right? So he made a big deal because they blew over in the storm, and he's saying there because the bank failed, right? So we went out, engineer looked at it and everything, and they're like, they just blew over. It was a major hurricane.
Right.
And yes, they're in the easement. Well, then it's your responsibility. CDD, I need you to reimburse me the $10,000 I had to remove these trees. And the district's like, they're in the easement. It's our easement, but it's your property. So he's hiring an attorney. Well, the attorney came in, did the thing, and was like, you don't have a case. This is your land, even though we have that easement, and the trees were rightfully in that easement, right? So again, they don't call arborist and they just make the determination. They move on with their life. It depends on how much risk you and liability that you as a board want to take.
Well, let me ask the question a different way, because Tom phrased it in a way where I wasn't really thinking of it that way, but what is the minimum requirement by state law?
There, as of 2 years ago, wasn't any case law on the dead live distinction. It's if you were on notice that the tree could fall down.
Right.
There's no great case that says, okay, this tree was dead, you're live, or this tree was live, you're not. So notice is the big thing. So if we're on notice that there is a tree that's dead, so.
Well,
yes,
the question is notice of,
there's no great case law that says exactly how dead you have to
But
be.
if somebody contacts CDD via app or phone call or email, that is a notice.
That is a notice, and somebody should go look and say, okay, it's dormant, the leaves are off because it's.
Right.
I don't see any way out of it.
And that's
Well,
what we
and
do.
I like Dave's threshold, because dead is both the easiest and it's also the highest threshold to determine. If you start talking about diseased or discolored or whatever else, it's dead or it's not.
So
No,
what
and-
determines the arborist? Greg Filak calls us and goes, hey guys, can you come look at my tree in front of the house? It looks like it looks like it could go at any minute. Okay, we go look at it. We're like,
Who's we?
Infomark,
Well, staff has to
the
go look first.
landscape.
Staff's gonna go
Yeah.
first.
Staff
Yeah.
has to go first.
And then they may pull in the landscaper and go, hey, can you come look at this tree? We don't think anything's wrong with it. Same as they did with the case of this, right? Staff went and looked at it first, didn't see any issues. It's not gonna fall on your house, Mrs. Homeowner, you're fine. She comes again. Okay, we get an arborist to go out with us, look at it, landscaper goes out, then we hire an arborist. But I mean, where's the threshold? When do you want to spend the money? Greg doesn't feel comfortable about his tree. We're telling Greg, this tree's fine. It's fine. Now I get it. The onus is now on us, right? But let's say he does it two days before a hurricane. He's told us he doesn't feel comfortable about the tree. We've gone out.
Well,
This tree is structurally sound. It's fine.
Put the hurricane timing to the side. That to me is,
That's different.
I'm not a lawyer, but that's gonna
No.
fail in reasonableness. That's the
But
problem.
this homeowner's tree fell over during a hurricane. Right. And it was up before.
That's right.
But the difference being, going back to it, was our first notice that we got 2 days ahead of time, to me seems unreasonable.
Mhm.
Or did we get it 6 months ahead of time and 2 days before happened to be the fourth phone call where he says, yeah, I've called you 3 times, we talked about this, now there's a hurricane.
Problem is
Those are two different
so you have
situations.
data, because I mean, I don't know if you're making a lot about one situation, or are we talking about it at 350 calls that by DEFCON 2, you
Right.
can't get them off
Right.
the
Well,
list?
that's
Like, what are we talking about, 2%?
That's what I'm trying to ask, how many
Or
tickets are
I mean, there's
50%?
probably been what? Can you look in there?
I'm looking right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's.
Yeah,
it's
so
those
celebration is
cases.
a bit of an aberration in the number of trees.
Thank you.
Just,
Well,
just,
a lot to
I mean, but we have another in Osceola County where people wanted to remove all the trees, and the
Yep.
county's
Yes.
like, absolutely, you cannot do that.
Right.
That's part of the.
So backing up
development.
to the very beginning real quick. Green tree falls, breaks Greg's fence. I go to the fence, cut it and say, have a nice day.
Yes,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
If a dead tree falls and we weren't notified about it,
same thing.
same thing. Then, well, you got some firewood, Greg, have a nice day.
Exactly.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
yes.
Cause I would love to say, and I'm pretty confident in saying that if there's a dead tree
Cause we've
and
been,
we've been put on notice, we're going to remove the tree before it
One
falls.
question, can I take my dead tree on my property and can I?
I wouldn't say,
put it
yeah,
into
it came from the,
Conservation.
it came from the
technically?
conversation.
I'm gonna say,
Yeah.
no,
Came from
you
there.
cannot.
No.
No, yeah, no, you cannot.
Why not? It
You
came
can't.
out of the conservation
You
area,
can't.
it should go back
You
in.
can't.
It's the
They
circle of
cannot put
life.
anything back into the conservation, only we can drop the tree in there.
Okay.
Yes, because
No sense
just,
at all.
Same
We,
tree.
we just don't want.
Question's been answered.
Yes.
Right, I got it.
Yeah.
We don't want dumping,
I get it.
because,
I
because a
understand.
lot
Right.
of, a lot of landscapers
Russ.
dump
I
Russ.
get it.
everything in
It
there,
is a
so
slippery,
officially, no.
It's
No,
fine.
you gotta take it part of it.
All right.
How many?
There's 101 requests since March.
Okay, so 100 people called saying, I don't like my tree. and
For
we
whatever
go-
reason.
All right, the first thing we do is we send our staff out.
We go
there.
look at it.
So
And
how
they
many
say-
go pass first pass, right?
Right, and so- If
Yeah.
if you say all 100 of them look fine, what's our exposure if one of them falls? I'm looking at Jan.
Do we have something?
I am too.
Yeah.
I am too.
We're all looking at
We
it.
have our report and, let's say, having an arborist report would be great if we got a report that said the tree is not dying.
We don't wanna
I'm
do
telling you,
that.
we have
Yes,
100
yes.
and the staff goes out and tells every 100 one of them, it looks fine, you're good.
It looks
It's
fine,
good.
if we can get our landscaper to do it and put that in as well, saying we had our staff as well as the landscaping guy who said it looks fine, not bad. And we keep notes of it, then at least we have an argument that we looked, we did not see any damage, we did not anticipate.
How many of those 101 go to DEFCON 2 where they say, I don't like your answer, Russ, I want another answer?
That's
From
what-
the homeowner?
Yeah.
Well, the last one was a prime example.
Well, but that's.
What,
No,
like
but how many-
50%?
One out of 100. I mean,
40,
I guess
30?
Yeah,
Probably,
can't we have them go get an arborist if they're that concerned and we think.
maybe 25%, they might call back 6
Yeah,
months.
No, you do not want.
In
Right,
every
yeah.
case where somebody else's arborist comes in,
They always
that tree
say
could be
that-
perfectly alive, and hey, that thing needs to get
They're
removed
paying
because they're.
Absolutely.
No, I agree with that.
So
I
out of the
think we
100,
should be
about
calling our-
25% don't like the answer.
So let me skin this cat another way. If the aversion is, I think I'm hearing from you and from all of us, is the cost of the arborist, which is what,
For me, it's not just the cost. For me, it's the whole
It's the
process,
principle.
that
Right.
just, it.
The principle and
Okay.
precedent.
You can't,
so part of the aversion is the cost.
How much was this,
And the
Carrie?
quality of the report that
How much was?
So-
says moderate risk.
Oh,
let me
What does
ask-
that mean
I'll
from a
ask
legal
Brad.
basis?
6 hours.
It means, okay, here's something to flash in court saying, hey, they were aware of a risk.
the word risk
Yeah.
is in there.
My question was gonna be, what would it take, Angel, to put in your contract that we require Infomark to have an arborist on staff? That is
Oh, that would be high.
just part of the operating cost of the
Yeah,
contract.
but that's more of a landscaper.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I can look at their cost.
Mhm.
I'm fixing to find out how much is. our risk.
I didn't know if you could take one of your current staff and train.
No.
take that.
No, we could.
Yeah.
We could. How
Well,
much
the
is
thing
our
is,
risk
Russ, 'cause
an
we know we
hour?
had a couple of trees and then I noticed they looked at 5 and Russ said he was gonna charge us all day. Whether he looked at 1 tree or 6 trees, we were gonna
Oh,
charge. for
Daily,
Yeah.
daily rates
So I
kind
said,
of
okay,
thing.
let us.
Well, there's another, well.
You know, I'm gonna suggest you, the arborist, we're not gonna get an arborist who's gonna say it's dead or alive.
No, you're not.
Nobody's ever gonna say that.
Nope.
They're
Throw that one
liable.
out.
I don't see why not.
They
I can
won't.
say it. They don't wanna- they don't wanna take that liability.
They will not take on that liability.
Not tell if the tree's dead or alive.
Yeah. but
This is
I
what
think
they-
it's dead or alive.
You can say dead, guys, hold on, too many conversations.
This is what they
So-
tell you.
So, listen. It's so funny, we want to avert risks. And so does every other company. Right? No one's gonna give you, no one's gonna go black and white. Now, Dave says he doesn't believe it, so. Let's call up 2 or 3 arborists and see, will they go ahead and give us something that's,
Sure.
It's
Point
the
blank,
same-
one
There's
way or
a
the other.
legal definition that we should be able to meet.
They don't
there
have,
isn't.
there's
the-
not.
No, there isn't a case law that says it has to be dead. There, the dead diseased is sort of a analysis of what we think case law would wanna say, but there's no case that says. This one was dying, so it wasn't dead, so you're off the hook.
Well, instead of saying
It's
dead,
totally fact specific. so it's a
instead of
matter
saying dead or
document.
alive, can we simply have them remove I think to Dave's aversion? Have them remove the scale of stuff, whether it's dead or alive or needs to be removed. Red or green, whether it's, hey, maybe it's still alive,
At
but at
risk.
risk of falling.
at risk, or.
Or not.
Or cleared,
Yeah.
it's fine.
And whether it's dead or not, I don't care,
Mm-hmm.
but I need to his point, a binary answer. I don't need a third category.
They kind of jump on Dave's bandwagon. One of the college campuses, it wasn't one I was managing, but we had a tree that was damaged. Arborist came and embraced it, right? Tree line fell, hurt a student.
Mhm.
You've already admitted liability because you've able to embrace the tree. You acknowledge that there was a problem with
Yes.
the tree.
That's right.
And I think when you start looking at that low risk, moderate scale,
You've
Yeah,
got
you're
some
assuming
risk.
some.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, by reading this, all of these trees have to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that report
Doesn't
doesn't
matter.
provide anything. It says their trees are fine, however, there's a risk. There's a
Yeah.
risk of every tree in the state. of
So do you,
Florida.
Angel, do you revise and extend your remark that they won't go dead or alive, but they will say remove, don't remove?
I don't know. All I can tell you is anytime I've done an arborist, they give you, it's a very vague. It's, yes, this may pose a threat or, you know, it may continue to decline or it may start to decline. There's no definitive,
The reality of what
you
they're gonna do is they're gonna take anything that was from a 0 to 10 scale. If it's not 0, they're gonna say cut it. It's gonna be the reality. They're gonna be
But
things.
you know, if you have a city arbor, I mean, I've seen I have in my backyard, a city arborist said this tree needs to be removed because it's dying and blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
And you get a note saying, we're gonna remove this tree because it's not healthy.
yeah, I think if there's a
I mean,
definitive, like that tree is dead, it needs to come out and poses a hazard, they will absolutely put that on the report. But if you have all these trees, I mean, if you read in here, every tree in your community is basically what he's saying.
Yeah, that's why I don't like this report at all.
Is it not a, yeah, my moderate risk of
Might
damage.
carry this.
Yeah.
The tree that falls over is going to damage.
We're at risk for hurricane.
Yep.
Yeah, every-
That's exactly what he said.
Well, it's also because we're in a swamp, for God's sake.
So I think it's,
And we all agree to buy here. Gary, you have 30 seconds?
Yes, sir. One more, I think we're forgetting the fact that homeowners insurance covers damage to my property.
that's right.
So
Deductible.
that's where I should file a claim, not with CCDD.
Well, we've had that conversation with residents and what we get back is, why should I have to
Why should I
risk
have to
my
pay?
premiums going up and pay my deductible when it's your responsibility? And we're like, well.
Yeah, but I think,
It's-
so, and this is where I come down to, I think that's the word is responsibility. Okay, because there's a certain part where it is the homeowner's responsibility. And a lot of homeowners choose for us to be the landscaping service. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I do want to make sure that the district is as clear as possible. But I think if somebody calls up for the tree, I think it's bad, that doesn't mean anything. Right, they're just making a request. And maybe staff has to say, not 100% sure on this, let me get an arborist comes in. And here's the deal, so I had a question, I don't mind getting an arborist for, 20 trees, right? If that's what we want to do, we agree to that, we'll go ahead and do it. But then we're also asking to make sure we get the report that we want, right? So we have to find out if we can get the report that we want.
Mhm.
If we don't get the report that we want, then we're right back to where we started, right? If we reach out to 5 arborists, if we can't get the report that we want, then we're gonna go back to, okay, so then what do we do? And maybe we wait for that to see if that's possible. We can get an arborist to at least give us guidance. We recommend.
We understand that there's an art to this because you look at all of us and healthy, maybe not so healthy,
What did you
My-
think when you did
my-
that? That is rude.
Wait, I'm low.
I was thinking.
I'm low risk.
No,
There's
he-
moderate risk.
But
Stop attacking people.
the thing that doesn't do us any good, if we just get hey, yeah, it looks okay.
No,
We
I
need
I get
to
that.
make
We
decisions.
need action.
I just wanna remind everybody that there's a lot of requests that are not valid. And I just don't want to say, to lump all of them into one.
Well,
Is that just
they're
not
the
right?
first line
I
of
think,
defense.
yeah,
Right.
the first line of defense is documented, we came out and looked at your tree, the tree is healthy,
Right.
And this.
And I gotta believe there's a
think
significant percentage. once
No, no,
this-
no. We're getting something definitive before we leave this room tonight, because here's what happens. We go out and look at it. Staff and landscape says, nope, tree's fine. Then they go to Dave and go, I called staff. They won't remove this tree. And then Dave calls us and goes, guys. This homeowner says he's called you 5 times and y'all won't remove his tree. What's going on? You guys got to, let's
We
go.
can't decide anything tonight.
Pick a lane. We're doing a policy. This is
Yeah,
what
we
this
need
workshop's
direction.
about.
And I can't tell you from there is no live tree, dead tree distinction in case law to say exactly. If there's a dead tree and you don't take it down and it hits, it's likely, you'll be responsible. If it's a live tree that you think is healthy, but somebody's complained 10 times, the court might say, well,
Well, how
It's totally
confident are you as staff in being able to determine, if you look at any tree, whether that's
So
dead
remember,
or
They've
alive?
been doing it for
remember, this
28
is the
years.
first time that I'm aware of that we've ever got an arborist out there. And if it wasn't for someone's mother that used to work for us, I think too, that had something to do with it.
We probably wouldn't have done it this
And
time.
would just relentlessly call every day about the tree. We wouldn't even be talking about this.
So
Not
28
in the
years, your
back-
staff's
not
been
in the back
doing
of the
it,
house.
no issues.
Out of 100, you have one issue where this is manifest.
In the back of the house.
In the back of the house.
Yeah.
So
And I will tell
not
you,
really,
we went out there, Russ went, we went together. Yeah, I went with us, Paul went with us on the last occasion, she came to the board meeting. She called me yesterday, when you coming to prune my trees?
Yeah,
She asked me
yeah.
yesterday.
Again,
Let me add this.
I'm not.
I didn't realize when I bought the house, all these trees were here.
Oh,
What?
goodness.
Not a problem.
That was a quote.
We're not going to address by policy homeowners that don't like answers. I got it.
No.
no, we just need something definitive, so it's not subjective. If staff goes out, if that's the way you're gonna go and go, staff is your first line. If they determine, obviously, I would hope we're competent enough to go, we really can't tell. We need to get an arborist, but if we're sitting there telling them, yes, this tree is fine.
Yeah.
Then we stand behind what we say, and yeah, things are gonna happen. Maybe the tree falls over tomorrow. We don't know. But if that's not the way you want us to handle it, and you're saying every time someone does, if it's something like that, get an arborist, we will do whatever you want us to do, but there has to be something definitive, because we ran into several situations this year where we've told homeowners one thing, they've gone to a board member with it, and then the board member comes back to us and we're like,
That's not, yeah, that's.
Well, but guys, I will tell you my angst with the one in particular, we all know
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about. We've already addressed, it's the watch list piece, it's the gray area, to Dave's point. if
so
you
we
make
will
this
change
binary-
watch list. We'll change that word.
Take this into a binary state, I'm good.
don't say.
Yeah.
It doesn't get.
It's either dead or it's not dead.
Well,
But-
it's either risk or no, or.
And I agree, the
Or
watch
acceptable.
list is a bad idea,
Acceptable or risk.
Or risk, okay.
but also it didn't change the fact that a hurricane hit.
Right.
Acceptable.
Which is an error.
Well,
Or
but
and-
risk.
And when I say watch list, it's never one that's gonna fall over.
You don't say watch list anymore.
But you see trees that are
Tom,
here.
But
Yes.
to Tom's point,
Acceptable or not?
within a reasonable time period before a hurricane, if we have had something identified, I don't know what that reasonable time is, but there's a time. If we have had somebody call up, we sent the arborist, and the arborist said, nope, it's on the red list, if we've had reasonable time to take it down, we should take it down, at that point, we're good. If the arborist came out and said it's good and it falls over, I'm okay fully supporting the
we
fact that
also-
we were good, and we had an arborist look out and say, we did the best we could.
And
100%.
I think establishing the term reasonable time is also important.
Yeah.
Because if it
Yeah,
takes
if it's
15
3 days,
days to
yeah.
get an arborist, let's just say, right? And we know the hurricane's coming, and we don't know, we usually don't know like within 5 or 6 days it's actually gonna hit. Nothing we can do.
Well, one piece of perspective, I can appreciate that we've never done it for 28 years, but the past 28 years.
Just a lot of stuff we
previously-
haven't done that we're supposed to.
Well, there's that one, but
Yes.
also, all the trees were newer and younger, now we've got older trees and bigger trees.
Well,
So
we
I
used
think
to have
that-
Tom McCullum come out and look at some of these trees.
And he's not an
He's
arborist.
technically not an arborist.
He's an horticulturist.
Yeah, so that
He's
is no.
pretty damn smart when it comes to trees.
But
Well,
we
a
need
lot
to
of
treat
people
some of
are,
that.
but if you're talking about you want something to be able to be certified and stand behind it,
Could you not, it's just simple, you get the request and you say to everybody, hey, our certified arborist comes out for 4 times a year. First quarter, second quarter, third, fourth. Once the staff determines it's acceptable or not acceptable. If it's on a gray area, well, we could put it on the list and for one day have them look at those things, but they bring them up.
we brought that up,
here.
what, a year ago?
It's simple.
Was having an arborist come once a quarter to do like an inspection.
Because again, they'll charge you
Mhm.
1 tree, 12 trees. You're there
That
for a
makes
day.
sense. I like that idea.
We talked about that.
That way you're catching everybody, you've got an escalation path and you're like, hey, listen, we only have it 4 times a year, it's in the budget. And if we say, it's acceptable, then we have no action. If you really push it, You gotta wait till the arborist come, or you can do it yourself.
We'll let this guy in.
Don't
Don't do yourself though.
Yeah.
I believe you were like.
I don't want to accept your arborist, is what I'm saying.
So an arborist is $150 an hour. Is
But four
essential.
times a year.
No, I'm just saying, that's
Yeah.
what they.
Oh,
they're
If
charging.
we get an arborist,
It's not a high cost, like you said,
Sometimes.
four times a year, one day, we have one now, there could be in a quarter,
Today, or.
there could be in a quarter, they might not have any trees,
Well, I'm just saying,
Right.
no, don't
then
come.
don't come.
And
Okay.
is that the only thing?
Well, there could be something else.
Well, no, because when we had brought it up before, I thought it was more a general inspection based on, hey, staff has seen trees, but so we would
Yep.
lump all those in there as well.
Yeah.
Anything that we've accumulated within that quarter, we have him come maybe at the end of that quarter and go,
Just tell them,
here's the list we
that's
have
what
for
it
this
should have. If you don't like our answer, you gotta wait till that, if we say it's acceptable.
Yeah, not to pick this scab again, but in the.
But he's gonna do it anyway.
Why didn't you let me finish?
Well, but you said it not to do it, and then you
Yes,
went
but
ahead
I am
and
gonna
did
do
it.
In the example where somebody called out and says, I don't like my tree, it looks dead, you come out there and says it's fine, and then it blows over a couple weeks later. Are we on the hook for that?
No. He didn't say it was just dead. He said he was worried about it. That's all he said. Oh, because a branch had fallen off.
Yeah, the one that fell on somebody, are we paying for a new porch?
I've never heard from the man.
Yeah, I cut the tree out.
I've never heard from him. I think he told Greg,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, he was spirited in this
Oh, he was,
conversation.
yeah, we went to help him, we were just out
Yeah.
there helping in the community.
He's never reached out to me and said, hey, a tree fell. I want this like never reached out to
He
me.
was clear on his porch, he got talked down and.
Yeah, you could,
I got it
you could
handled.
take the two of us.
No, good. But how that happened was he called, there was a tree, Kimberly Walker actually lives right there by him. And a branch fell off the tree. It prompted him to call and go, my tree, some branches are falling off. Can you come and look at it? Went out and looked at it. Russ is like, well, yeah, all the trees on that street are the same. I'll add it, we're watching this street. Told him that. And that was the end of what we heard, and then it fell over.
So I also want to make sure though, out of it is, and I appreciate trying to be conservative with the dollars.
Mhm.
I don't want staff to be afraid to come up, and Spring Park Loop is an example, guys, you can drive down the street, it's no secret.
No, there's plans for that.
There's problems there, but whenever those pop up, don't hide those, bring those up and say, hey, we got a problem.
We
need to do
have.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, this board
Yeah.
has been very much aware of Spring Park Loop.
Yeah.
About the trees, but the other part of it is too, is like Spring Park Loop, we'll just lose that. We brought that to the board. What do you want us to do? We can go out there and remove how many trees?
I think it was about 53 left.
Yeah,
We can go remove them all and replace them, but this board's never pulled the trigger on that. So it's not a, yeah, well, it's not a matter of, when it's something like that, when it's 1 and 2, we have a budget, right?
Mhm.
And he's very good at working with them, that budget, without bringing stuff to you all.
Mhm.
But when it reaches a capacity like that, where clearly we're gonna blow the budget, that's gonna be a board decision.
Probably about $100,000.
Yeah,
But again, once a quarter, that's part of the assessment, but that arborist comes on site, it's just.
And I don't wanna speak for Russ, but I think 90% of the trees we can say that are high risk, no risk. I think we make that list for that quarter, and like, here's what we get the average, probably.
Remember it.
100%.
So the other thing that did come up, so are we good on the tree piece in particular, is everybody okay with that?
I don't know.
Well, Ernie might watch for this right now, so.
Hey,
Well, because the other thing that did come up in a prior meeting was the landscaping behind houses, not trees. But hey, our landscapers, that was several complaints, we're kind of gin this conversation.
well, but they want a policy first.
Yeah.
I understand,
so number one, we don't trim trees on the preserve side, period. That's number one. Number two, the landscaper. It
They
was
do
the
not.
neighbors landscapers
Yep.
that were going behind, not them, so.
None of our
on that,
landscapers go behind residents' homes.
not true,
Yeah, we do.
Where?
Well, there's swells,
they're all over the
The
place.
swells,
yeah.
but we're talking about the
It's not
area
in-
where,
It's not on their
Yeah.
property, it's on our property.
right,
But it is behind houses.
right, but not directly
not on their
behind,
property.
not
No,
on
no,
their
no, not on
property.
resident property.
Not on their
Yeah.
property.
But there are easement areas behind houses, because right at the same time, we got the call for the one over in Artisan on Tapestry.
Mhm.
I got a call, or I got an email from somebody on Spring Park Loop saying, and it's one of the residents that emails us frequently, saying, hey, you've been back here before, you've been cutting my grass back, not his grass, but the CDD easement grass back here for 10 years. You haven't cut it, it was because it was after the storm, and it looked bad. I didn't know we were cutting behind houses at all.
There's
I-
definitely easements and swells we do, but I thought those particular residents that came were residents that said, we mow behind their house and,
Right.
yeah.
I would, one guy's opinion, ponds and swales and stuff, that's one thing, I think we should continue to do those make sense.
Well, you have to, yeah.
The easement area where, hey, somebody's fence, and then there's a wood line, but then there's 10 feet of grass behind it. In my mind, that's no different than the 10 feet of grass I got in front of my house.
Yeah,
But
I
I
didn't know
should
we
take
were mowing that. We were mowing,
We have for 30 years.
but are we supposed to be
Yeah,
mowing that?
it's our property.
Well, the property in front of my house is the CDD property.
Yeah,
too.
Well, it's not, that's not in your deed.
Yeah.
That's, the property in front of your house is in your deed, the back is
The
not.
back easement is not part of their, I'm
That's-
asking.
That's why I'm trying to find
I
differentiation.
think the CCNR say you have to take care of the virgin.
Yep.
The verge is part of the celebration charter.
So the easement behind the
Okay.
home isn't
Then
part
that's
of
the
y'all's
difference. Okay.
lots? Is that,
Oh,
okay.
Nice try, Greg.
I
caught you.
That makes sense.
So beyond their fence, that's what we're calling our easement and we mow all that? Okay.
So can we get something actionable out of this workshop?
I thought we did, you're building parking lots, but I,
Yes,
I
Arborists
actually
once a
thought
quarter
that,
you can
to,
add on that you notify the CDD through the app or in writing.
yeah,
In writing,
Right.
if you have a tree
issue.
question.
Staff,
comment,
staff
complaint.
goes and assesses it first.
right,
Yeah,
If staff thinks
That we
there's
don't-
any possibility that it is
Acceptable or not?
that it is black instead of
If it
white.
is not acceptable, there needs to be a SLA for how long that is. Is it 3 days, 5 days, 7 days? Pick a SLA.
but we already have a
Service level agreement.
in the app, we already have.
Well, what is it?
Or is it at
Off the
risk?
top of my head, but we do have SLAs for every single
So
item.
if it's
10 days?
unacceptable,
I think, I think it's less
And
than
they should
that.
do what?
to remove.
What are you
the tree.
asking?
inspect the
If it's
tree.
unacceptable.
To remove
No.
a tree.
Oh, to remove the tree?
I know, let's not talk about removal, we don't wanna put,
If it's
Dates on.
unacceptable from a staff,
Mhm.
we don't wanna put a date, because you get a storm and then you miss a day
Well,
and suddenly
so
you're,
it's just open ended.
yeah, when, how long to review? But
We normally will do, 6, 8 trees, have them cut down and then replace.
Yeah.
Instead of one at a time, cause then you're getting charged.
I wouldn't want to put a
Every
time
time.
frame.
Yeah, no.
If
Alright.
reasonable, it's reasonable.
So.
How many,
Know what that means.
Hold on,
Well, that's
hold on,
good.
hold on.
Yeah.
Jan, what's your question?
how many days for staff to review? If you
Well,
get a
hold
complaint
on.
about
Carrie's
tree-
trying to explain the process.
I'll let
Okay.
Jan answer that.
What Jan is asking the
I'm
question,
asking the question.
is it 7 days?
To review it?
Yeah.
To review it.
You get a-
Normally it'll get done in 2 days. Yeah.
So,
So within 4 days, we will get
yeah,
out there.
within 4 days.
Within a week.
Is the assessment, yes,
Business
no,
days.
a reasonable time, if that's the
Within
legalese
1
you wanna
week,
put in there
and-
to
yeah,
address
if-
the
If
non-com.
it's unacceptable, we'll remove.
Right.
Or-
And
Well,
it's
it'll be
not-
resolved within a week.
If not, the only escalation path is you either get your own arborist, and if you can give us and refute our logic, or you wait for our arborist, which is done once a
Once a
quarter.
quarter.
Contesting order will come.
But I
forward.
don't want.
I don't know
Yeah,
that
we
I
don't
agree
want
with that
them to
part.
get, we don't want them to get their own.
I don't know that I even want to give them the option.
No, I don't,
Counter
because,
argument on
because
that.
they're gonna hire their brother arborist.
Yeah.
Who's gonna say remove the tree, they're guaranteed, they're gonna say because the guy's paying them. So it's exactly
no,
what
if-
they go ahead and do.
All right, then
If
just
it's
shut that
contested
down.
or questionable, then our arborist will come once a quarter.
Once a
and
quarter on these
review it.
dates, and here's your
Yeah.
calendar.
The challenge of putting a time frame on removal, so the tree in question that we were talking about, is back in the conservation, area behind the house.
Really
Getting a
tough,
crane.
really tough to
to
get
get
in
in
there.
there. That would be very difficult.
You got 5 days, go.
Okay, we're not gonna- okay.
Helicopter. See
Yeah,
it?
you need to.
Yeah, and if the notification is made, prior to a storm, we can't guarantee a time frame for response.
And again,
Well, yeah, that's-
there's a reasonableness test there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, cause I think after another disappearing, but I think we got a lot of reports of people saying. "Oh, I know, cause we're cleaning everything else up, it
Yeah.
just seemed just.
It just, that one was the grass maintenance.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
surprised we were back there at all.
No, but there was a lot of requests.
So is that, do you have the policy that you need?
I think we can come up with something.
Yeah, I just wanted something definitive to where. Staff, now, if a resident comes to you guys, I mean, please relay that to us, so we have it in writing and can, have a conversation.
And I guess we'll have to look at some sort of graphics, whatever, to explain. Property line,
I'll try to come, UF has a good sort of description.
yeah, I just want, I just want visuals Because you put all the words in and people go, and then they're like, there's nothing on the webpage. And you see the visuals and like, okay,
I'll
That's
see what
what
I
it
can
is.
find for predictions.
So anything outside of your property line?
front and back in terms of CDD, like we'll trim from. I've had homeowners that go ahead and says, I know you'll trim over the sidewalk. And it doesn't make sense why you don't trim this piece, because if you trim this piece,
Private property.
this branch is hanging, so you'd have to, you know.
The explanation makes sense, but to Tom's point is, even the policy we did a year or two ago.
Mhm.
Visualizing that for a homeowner so they can clearly understand it, because I'll tell you, 80% of the times I've had the conversation since we passed the policy. People accept it and get it, but I have to sit there and explain it to
Yes.
them, or I have to get you to explain it to
Yeah,
them.
the county.
Here's what it means.
So what are you gonna
Osceola or-
do?
so Osceola or
box?
somebody has a picture of showing like trimming over the sidewalk
Yes.
versus trimming over the road. We can find a picture.
Okay,
Do you need explanation of why we won't trim on their property?
No.
no, we don't have explanation. No, we,
Okay.
no.
That's where I'm confused. I'm
board-
like, what do you
The
want? A
board
box
has
that
established,
says?
we will
Here
only
it
do
is.
this up to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
like,
it.
here's
Yeah,
your
that's-
box.
that's
We
the
will not go
explanation.
inside this box.
No, we don't need to put Monday bans, we'll put it on our website and we can refer people to that, because nobody. reads
So
Monday
over the
Bans.
sidewalk, over the roads.
Over sidewalk, over roads, not in conservation. If it's over your
What do
property, you can
Oh,
exit.
They didn't list the.
Right.
When you need a report for.
You have a right to-
to
right to trim and cut everything down because
Yeah.
it's crossing over.
Okay.
Over your box.
Anything else?
Anything over your box.
Is there anything
That's why we have
else,
the board.
since we're talking about, is there anything else, since we did pass the policy on the tree stuff, that is, whenever you pass something, there's always that, oh, we forgot this. Are there anything, since we're talking and revisiting, is there anything you would recommend that we add or change into what we passed a year or two ago, or are we good to go?
Is there any confusion now?
There never was confusion other than,
Well, there actually was.
well,
Oh, yeah.
No, there was.
on our part, occasionally we have picked up stuff out of people's backyards when the tree fell.
So if Russ.
We don't do that.
If Russ uses
We don't,
any
no.
of
So
those
that's the
words,
only thing that's
We-
changed.
shock treatment or something.
I just, it's just really clear, if
Carrie,
it-
is there
if it's on their property. If it's on, seriously, on my house, stuff gets blown here and there, when it gets windy or whatever. It's on my property, I go ahead and toss it, I don't expect the CCD to
95
come out. and
homeowners
pick
out of
that.
100 are gonna do the same thing.
They are, so it just,
5%.
No.
I mean, there are requests, hey, are you gonna trim this tree? I'm like, oh, it's a service area, no. Right, we don't do any of that stuff, we don't have trees in the alleyways, except for like those island, the put in there.
Oh, we've forgotten one big part of this whole tree program that we've talked about, but I don't think we've mentioned what the policy is the root barriers.
The what?
Root barriers.
Oh, roof barriers.
Yeah, we have.
Well, no, we have
on
talked about
barriers. That's covered.
You mean doing roof barriers?
Yes.
Yeah, we have adopted.
We've already got.
policy.
Oh, that's a separate one?
Yeah.
But that's for Island
That's
That's
for
for
Village.
new
That's for
installation.
new development.
New install, yeah.
New installation.
We talked about this, remember at the last one
Yes.
going,
We actually had,
We actually talked like
we actually had,
2 times.
well, before you guys.
Well, it's not part of the policy. Where you with a case by case.
No, because this policy is our policy for homeowners.
but
Right.
we did, if you remember, when we were talking about the sidewalk project and tree replacements, the board was like, well, are you putting in root barriers? And we're like,
Well,
no.
we actually had, if I remember,
We had-
about 2 or 3 years ago, you
We
did
had
an estimate for
environmental,
one tree.
put one in and
Yeah.
it took them, I forget,
It,
I think
it
it was
was
like $800 or
Oh,
something.
no,
like that.
Brett told me it was somewhere in the
It-
neighborhood of 6 or 7,000.
It is.
Because
because you have to, for some of these trees, you have to
To
excavate.
go back and. rent-
Everything.
There's nothing but roots. So you
Right.
can really dig roots.
That's right.
Well, we were off of that, but when we replace a tree, so I'll use Spring Park Park,
Because you put roof.
We
We're
put a
only moving it.
No,
Yeah.
the answer is no.
Because the roots are already there and you still.
Yeah.
need to get
The
all that
answer is
stuff out.
no, but if you wanted us to, that's what we were talking about the last meeting of, we would have to rip up all the roots in order to put root barriers down. If that's what you want, we can do it, but right now,
Well,
when they replace a tree, they're not putting root barriers in,
Elm,
no.
elm trees tend to not look the sidewalk panels up now.
Yeah, because when you remove a tree, you're not removing all the root system.
Just with what you're working with, yeah. Same with sidewalks, when they pop panels, they're only removing the roots that are right there, right? They're not going out and removing them.
Okay, so everything else in the
Outside
policy is
everyone.
good though, did you guys have any issues? Okay.
No, not to my knowledge, unless you guys can think of anything else that you need clarity on.
Well, and if there is, then we'll, we can discuss it in a meeting.
Just since we're already talking about it, I don't wanna talk about trees again for another 3 months, so.
So arborist once a quarter to go over our list
And any other
issues.
issues or
I
guidance.
think that's a good plan.
Okay.
But if there's gonna be a conversation on arborists, then it's gonna be yes or no.
Yeah.
We don't have a scale.
Maybe
Okay.
we'll
We
talk
wanna
to
know-
several.
Yeah.
Carrie, talk to United's arborist and tell them kind of what we're looking for, see what his answer is. If not, we can look.
You're gonna get a paper.
We can look other.
Actually, no, him, he's worked for right to.
I'm
Oh,
gonna
okay.
ask if there's anybody
Cool.
that say, so you guys can say, so does anybody have any items? Because
Jack can't talk either.
I do have someone, because I had some resident come up to me and said. These boardwalks are dangerous with all these motorized scooters, all these places. And
they're
we need to come up with some kind of policy, and I know we have no enforcement capability.
Supposed to have motorized.
You're not supposed to have motorized stuff.
Well,
on
you
board.
tell those people they're doing it then, because do we put a sign there saying don't do it?
100% doing it, I've seen it.
You can put up a sign
But
and
it wasn't kids, it was adults doing it.
well, that's what I'm saying, it's,
even
I
better.
don't wanna like segment age groups, cause it's everybody,
Yeah.
it's just.
Yeah, it's, do you put up signs and then how do you enforce it?
Well,
Yeah.
we have no enforcement ability at
But
all.
signs at least hopefully somebody.
To deter it,
So
maybe.
where's the worst ones to start with?
I think they were an artist and they're probably going out to the high school.
Yeah.
So did we put maybe 2 signs up, see if that helps at all?
Yeah.
Is it you?
No, it's my kid.
It's
Oh.
only gonna-
That's what we figured.
So maybe-
He goes down the avenue,
Maybe
he
a-
doesn't go to high school yet.
A sign on each end, see if that works. We can
See if
also
it
put
helps.
something out on Celebration app going, just a reminder, there's
Okay.
no motorized vehicles allowed on boardwalks.
Do we have to put them on every boardwalk, do we put them on one?
I
Just asking.
Say we try 1 or 2 that are
See what
that
happens.
you guys
Big,
know that
big
are bad.
offenders, right?
Before you
wanna
start
see the-
plastering
put it on the website
signs
or put it-
everywhere.
And I'll be in the middle of the woods. And then that'll do it.
But I think to the point, what
Should have read the sign.
what are we really doing to measure this, guys? I mean. we're gonna
There's
put up
no
a sign, We're not
enforcement.
gonna sit here and track this
Well,
thing.
no, nobody's gonna enforce it. It's just the honest people are gonna abide by it.
Oh, they
We
don't.
just push out a message on my Celebration app.
Going really well.
I honestly, I wouldn't even, to the question though, I wouldn't even put out signs. I would just put it out on the app. I mean, I think. If we're gonna do one, we're gonna do them all. And if we're not gonna do them all, just put out a message saying you're not supposed to.
Are
be
you
out
gonna
there.
read the app message and tell your child to stay off of there?
Well, first off, Greg, not everybody's on that app.
True.
And not
Yeah,
everybody's on
then,
that.
and not everybody
put it
is,
on
you're
every-
right. They're not on the app.
Then put it on every wall.
Yeah, I would-
Motorized vehicles, we have to spend millions of dollars to repair the boardwalks, which you will be.
Your assessments are gonna go up to cover that $1 million.
It's not right, it's going.
I am just,
The
That's not what my
signs-
neighbor said.
All right.
Yeah, the signs do help from a
Let's-
liability perspective. If
let's do
somebody
that,
gets
but-
hurt on it, at least you can say, hey, we told them. not
we
to."
put a sign up.
The other one I wanted to ask about is put a stoplight down here at campus in the library.
They've been talking about that for a long
We've
time.
got, didn't TCC authorize the money like $250,000 years ago?
No.
Looked into that.
Somebody
No.
said that, I can't find
Yes,
it
but they, no,
anywhere.
They're getting ready
they
to
looked into it, they got rid of
redo
it.
some
when
stuff
they
here, so I
updated
don't think they're gonna put a lot.
Traffic jams over here at 5 o'clock.
it. Traffic's pretty bad, no, during the day.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they're getting rid of the toll plaza.
So from like.
They're widening
yeah,
something over
Celebration
here,
Avenue back
all the
that
way
way.
back.
They're gonna add at least 2 more lanes. to the
Yeah.
Median. I
Aren't they
don't
putting
think
a
they're gonna do a
roundabout?
light until they do.
I thought they were putting a roundabout out
There's
here
discussions
at
about
the end
that.
of campus.
Oh, I
and-
hope not.
No.
There's
No
discussion
roundabout.
about
That
it.
was an extra $1.1 million.
Yeah.
Are you
No, that
telling
was
me
then.
no, or you're saying
We're
that,
not gonna do that because that's part of our land that we don't own. We have to,
what?
the roundabout requires land that we don't own.
No, I'm not talking about you. Doing anything. I'm talking about the counties coming in. We just went over this
The county
in,
would have to buy land though, because they'd have to start jutting out into the adjacent property.
oh, well then what was he talking about?
He probably
I thought
was.
he said,
They-
right here.
3 years ago, they did bring a plan in
Disney
front of
was
us and said, hey,
supposed to
here's
pay
what it
for
would look like.
Disney
Someone
want to put a
did.
light.
And
weren't
well,
gonna-
and my comment at the time was,
They weren't
guys,
gonna put a roundabout.
we're not trafficking, because one former board member was, I want this, because.
That's where the roundabout came from.
Stop.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
just
have
had a conversation with Enterprise
Yeah.
Board.
Let me take a look because the engineer sent me the drawings.
Okay, good. We just had a conversation with Enterprise Board, which is Disney, right? And we were just informed of everything that they're doing right now.
Well,
And
all I'm
the
saying is-
engineer is part of it. So if he sent over the stuff, we can look at it, but I know for a fact they're ripping out the toll plaza, they're widening some stuff
I
here.
think the fence all the way down is
Yeah,
staying, but
right.
everything inside of it, they're gonna be,
Is
it's
going to go away, and then
Somewhat redone.
some stuff over here,
all part of the I-4.
and then the I-4 expansion thing,
I
so.
understand that, but we saw the traffic coming in here today. 5 o'clock, it's just
Pretty bad,
ridiculous.
No, I understand, I'm just telling you, that's what's happening.
Can we take the toll plaza and like get it out on the highway, just put it out here in front of here?
Why not?
Got it?
And just charge everybody to come in through
We owe them refunds.
here. But they gave him the plan so Carrie can look at it or share with you guys too. It's fine.
Anything else, Jack?
What about meeting times?
We're changing
That'll
meeting
be on
times
the
to during the day.
agenda.
Didn't
Is
we,
that
yeah,
what you
didn't we
said?
talk about meeting times before you got here?
Oh, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't in.
We're changing meeting time?
Well, yeah,
Five.
some people said
Two.
5 was okay, but I don't know, what your hours are.
I thought it was
Yeah, I can
2
always make it
o'clock.
That's all.
I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Some of us are.
Thank
Yeah.
thank you, thank you, yeah, I was
Someone's
pushing that.
pretending like we're-
Is it 5 o'clock? Is that what y'all wanna
Jack, that
do?
was about.
We can't make the, well, I guess we could,
Why were we
staff
changing
could
it?
make
Sorry.
the decision today.
Well, everybody's.
Staff-
That's an administrative.
Staff could make the decision to change it because I need to advertise.
Brenda said.
Brenda's
she could
already aware.
advertise.
Yeah, so.
It needs an extra hour, so she wants to get her hour earlier.
So,
Yeah.
Well, we're not gonna make the meetings any shorter.
We're still gonna go to 10.
tonight.
Yeah, I'm actually.
No,
Yeah,
that's
Brett.
not- that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
If we move it up an hour, we should be done a lot sooner. That's
should
the
be done,
goal.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
So do we wanna move?
Second then.
do we wanna move to 5?
Yes.
Dave?
I'm okay with 5.
We can't make decisions, but staff.
I can.
be, yeah, staff can
Oh,
make the
I
decision
did-
if there's no.
Well, but
objection.
if one board member
Can't
says,
make it.
I can't make it, then
Exactly.
No, we can.
I prefer to stay at 6, but if we're gonna go to 5, then we can go to 5, that's fine.
but I know your golfing gets in the way.
No, my golfing in the morning. 5's good for me.
That's why he didn't want 2, because he's just finishing up his golf
No,
game.
I get to bed at 9 o'clock, remember?
All right, so,
Call you at 8.
do y'all want to start this January or February meeting? February?
January, keep the same.
All right, so February,
It's already-
move them to 5 PM. Okay.
Wow, cool.
Got 1, maybe 2 things.
Oh, I guess, yes, you and Blue.
Roof update,
Yes.
it's about a third of the way through. When they got to the dormers,
Here we go.
we didn't feel like it was built correctly the first time.
Oh, really?
Shocking.
Wait a minute, hold on.
Oh, wait.
It's actually really bad.
Yeah, so it actually stopped them, they had to go modify, make some different sheet metal to do it correctly. They weren't attached to beams, and they were loose.
So they would have ripped
Almost
right out
every
on
place where
her.
that was is where we had leaks. So he did was he extended the panel where he is now attaching to.
It's very poor
I think he said there's also like hundreds of.
Nails
Nail
or
holes.
screws, whatever it was.
I mean,
that
they
missed
overdid
the-
it and cocked it and.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wanna minimize your penetration.
Right.
So I'm gonna pull that thread, I'm sorry. I realize we got past limits of liability and blah, blah, blah. Now that we're just discovering that the friggin' roof wasn't put together right, are we taking pictures of this?
Yes,
We have
I already
to
asked
send
that
this
It
question.
back.
may have been built to plan, we could.
That's not the plan.
Not.
You don't get that
Put
roof
together?
You don't
I
get that
guess it's a
permit.
warranty's been up a long time. ago.
That's not a
It's got-
warranty.
The
That's not a
sheet
warranty.
metal.
No, that's a
is
construction.
warranty.
No, it's not. It's a construction
So-
problem.
So,
Yeah.
hold on,
Yeah.
so. Do we have any avenue to pursue that? if
I don't
it's a
know that,
construction
Dan.
defect?
I can tell you what Nash told us.
Let me talk to my construction defect guys.
I-
Because we've been aware of the leaking, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
for
but now we're
years.
discovering that, oh, it was,
Yeah.
But
And now you'll
we
need
could have
full
investigated.
documentation and supporting from Nash.
Well, that was my other question. You're taking a ton of pictures, I assume.
So what did Nash?
We haven't, but we need to.
Make sure Nash
We need
is
that and make sure they're taking.
documenting.
no, well, yeah, they have to take pictures, but I would,
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, 'cause they're out
He
there
said
right
it was
now.
a very poor, it was a very poor job and, and again, he wasn't trying to bash anyone. He doesn't even know who did it, but,
He
he was just,
modified the flashing on the.
yeah,
Tell him, don't worry, we'll bash for him.
Yeah.
everything was a
Okay.
very poor,
Yeah,
poor
let me-
job.
Let me talk to two guys that just do construction litigation. Let me talk to them and get a feel for.
And
Can
you
you
have a
give
fair-
him tomorrow, Carrie, and make sure he's documenting and taking some pictures? I have a few pictures,
So-
but
So Jan, can you verify besides the pictures, what type of pictures we need? Like what are we really looking for?
Cause it was already ripped off.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
whatever, whatever they
Well,
had
it's
for
got three more
pictures, and we'd have to use them
Yeah.
for testimony.
Okay, so every single
Do
one.
we, I hate to
Yeah.
incur more cost, do we need to bring the engineer back in to look and say, yeah, that would have caused the leak?
Probably Nash's affidavit would be enough,
Be
but let me, if I find
Yeah,
out
and
more
he
tomorrow,
already-
yeah,
I think the engineer already provided a report that said it was
poor.
poor.
Well, but he didn't see the underside.
Right, he didn't tear it
Yeah,
out.
I don't know, we can call him, we can call Walter and ask him, or Webb, I'm sorry, and
I-
ask him if he can come out and look at it and maybe give us
Yeah,
some
well, I
additional.
suppose we have it opened up.
Yes, yeah, I think that would be,
For the
that
4-year fight we've had on this. if
I
we
will
can
tell
fight
you
this out.
too,
Okay.
when I was talking to Nash, because I wasn't here, Renee sent me some pictures and she sent them to me and I'm like, oh, is that foam? Like, what is that? And she's like, no, it's the insulation. So I'm like, what? So when I got here, we walked outside, me and Russ, and I was like, hey, are you replacing the insulation in there? And he's like, no. And I'm like, is that gonna mess with the integrity of the roof? And he goes, no, we wouldn't do that anyway. He goes, to be honest with you, I would probably take all that out. He goes, and then once the roof is done, you would have another company come in and spray foam in there. He goes, and I said, well, leaving that in there, does it have mold from all the leaks and everything? He goes, probably not. He goes, because I know you can't see it from here, but there's a thin plastic or something sheeting coating on the insulation. So when water hits it, it just rolls off. It's not penetrating the insulation.
And all them will fall.
Yeah, well, so right now, there's insulation in there from however long ago.
Yeah.
So the board needs to really look at, his recommendation was, yeah, when the roof is complete, they would never have done it during the roofing anyway. But after the fact, they can go in, I guess, from the inside, pull out the insulation, and he would recommend getting foam sprayed in there, which is gonna give you
Get quotes on it.
better insulation.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, well, does your company do this? He goes, no, but I work with companies who do it. So,
Because if, I mean, I'd like to have that cost for Jan as well, because that's.
yeah, if we can ask him, Harry, so that we can get a cost for that.
The only places that you're insulating when you do that is out in the shop. They're not gonna be able to get up in here and spray this.
No, he said they would. That's where the insulation is. That's where the insulation is.
Okay.
I'm just telling you what he said. I'm not a roofer. I don't know.
Would you guys stop arguing about
Yes.
Well, but you make a good point. I wonder why he would say that then, because he said after the roof is done, they would go in, pull out the insulation and
If
spray
you really
foam.
wanted to insulate like the shop or something, but
I don't know.
You wouldn't, you would only be in certain areas.
I don't think you can even get up here up to the roof.
It's just a drop down.
Well, you
Well,
get
they
somebody to
did the
come in.
mold testing in the dormer right here, so they were able to get up there somehow and do a mold swab or whatever.
There
that
has to be,
was.
there has to be something there.
On the front crawl space. Yeah, there was.
There's more?
There's more.
Yeah,
There's more?
I'll make it very brief, so. I had a conversation with the engineering staff at Meady Creek today. They're not opposed to doing some type of open blanket permit. But she said, and.
What's this for? What's this for?
to draw down the
Draw
pond.
down the pond at the
Oh.
high school like we did.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Mark and I discussed it a couple days ago. It's designed that way for the high school parking lot to flow.
Absolutely.
She said, number one, high school has to spend millions of dollars, and if they did. You gotta keep that water in the floodplain, so they're gonna have to do some type of.
Floodplain cutoff it's called.
That's exactly what it's called, so, not an option. She said we could pump it down, but we're only delaying the flooding, because you're just
Right.
putting it in the floodplain, and it's gonna come back at some point.
Yep.
But she said it's worth the discussion, and we're open to talking about how to do that. And she said Southwest Florida Management, they're kind of more open to doing that, because they got beat up last time.
So we can spend the money to draw down the pond if we want, but it's just gonna delay the
Well, we're
flooding. It's
open
still
to
gonna flood.
discussion.
Yeah.
So I'll have a conversation with Reedy Creek and the engineering staff.
Do we,
It's-
would it,
It's designed to flood, so the other alternative is the high school should contact the county and
Well,
not
that's
be
what
an
I'm saying.
emergency
Yeah,
shelter.
I would think the school district would be engaged
And that's,
to,
Yeah.
Bree said it's really a school issue.
It
it's a
is.
school problem.
Yeah, the school should not be a.
Because
hurricane
really,
shelter.
we shouldn't be asking to alter the way it's designed, which is to draw down, and that's the conversation I had prior to Carrie having the
well, and
conversation.
I think it's one thing if we draw it down and it stays okay, but if it's just
And
gonna
that- it's
flood.
not going
Ultimately
to.
flood.
Yeah, it depends on how high the floodplain is, the infinite source of water, so
Yeah.
once that floodplain comes up, it back flows through the structure,
Correct.
pipes and so far.
It's a school.
It's designed for the 100-year flood plan, but that's like every other year now.
Yeah.
Oh, they're coming. There was an IT issue, but they're working. All right, so motion to adjourn, yes?
So move.
So moved.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
Is somebody abandoned that black truck
Thanks.
out there? Been sitting in a parking lot.
I've asked Russ to have one.